In this video, we'll be talking a deep dive in the entire story of Bikini Bottom. Let's get started. Before we dive into how modern Bikini Bottom came to be, we need to start with its ancient history, and SB129 basically proves that SpongeBob and Patrick are like universal constants that have existed forever. Think about it. Squidward gets stuck in a freezer for 2,000 years, wakes up in the future, and guess what? There's still a SpongeBob. Not just any SpongeBob, but Spongetron with his clones, and a two-headed Patrick called Patron. These guys are still jellyfishing in the year 4017. But here's where it gets really interesting. When Squidward escapes to the past to avoid future SpongeBob, he runs into the same problem again. Primitive Bikini Bottom has caveman versions of his neighbors called Primate Sponge and Prehistoric Starfish. These are the same personalities, the same dynamics, just in different time periods. The whole thing starts because Squidward just wants to play his clarinet in peace. SpongeBob keeps interrupting him, asking if he's ready to go jellyfishing every 5 seconds. So Squidward hides in the Krusty Krab freezer, thinking he's found the perfect escape. Wrong move. He gets locked in and frozen solid for 2 millennia. When Spongetron finds him and thaws him out with a laser hammer, Squidward discovers that everything is chrome in the future. Even the flowers get spray-painted chrome by random fish driving trucks, but the relationships haven't changed at all. Spongetron and his clones still want to go jellyfishing with Patron. Same energy, same annoying persistence, just with robot bodies and multiple heads. The future even has 486 different letters in the alphabet, and Spongetron has clones for each one. Talk about taking things too far. So Squidward tries the time machine, figures he'll go to the past where SpongeBob doesn't exist yet, but surprise, he meets cavemen who are basically the same people. Primate Sponge touches his arm and sniffs it like some kind of weird greeting ritual. Prehistoric Starfish breathes on him with rotten teeth that look like they haven't been cleaned since the Stone Age. They're scared of jellyfish and have no idea how to catch them. These cavemen are actually more primitive than modern Patrick, which is saying something. Here's the crazy part. Squidward actually teaches them jellyfishing. He makes nets from their loincloths and shows them how to catch jellyfish properly. He literally creates the hobby that will annoy him for thousands of years. When he tries to play clarinet afterward, the cavemen go nuts and chase him, just like modern SpongeBob and Patrick would. The guy basically made his own nightmare come true. The time machine breaks when the cavemen attack it, sending Squidward into some weird void space where he's completely alone. You'd think he'd love this, right? Wrong. The place is just white emptiness with floating colored tiles. After hearing "alone" echoed forever in this white space, he breaks down crying. He misses Bikini Bottom, his house, and shockingly, even SpongeBob. The one thing he's been trying to escape from becomes the thing he desperately wants back. The moment he admits he misses SpongeBob, the time machine brings him back to present day. SpongeBob and Patrick are still standing outside his house, waiting patiently to ask about jellyfishing. They probably waited there the whole time he was gone. When Squidward tells them about his crazy time travel adventure, they drop the bombshell that he invented jellyfishing in the first place. The irony is perfect. SB129 is basically saying that these character types are eternal. No matter what time period, what technology level, or what stage of evolution, you'll always have the happy sponge, the simple starfish, and the grumpy neighbor. They're not just people living in Bikini Bottom, they're like basic forces of nature that keep repeating throughout history. The sponge will always be excited about everything, the starfish will always be simple-minded, and the squid will always be grumpy about life. The really wild part? Squidward created his own misery. He taught cavemen jellyfishing, which became the tradition that bugs him forever, and when given the choice between being alone forever and dealing with SpongeBob, he chose SpongeBob. Deep down, even Squidward needs these relationships, no matter how much he complains about them. Maybe the real problem is having no neighbors at all. What makes this even more interesting is how the episode shows that certain places are just meant for certain types of people. Bikini Bottom isn't random. Whether it's caveman times, present day, or the chrome future, the same types of characters keep showing up in the same place. Maybe some locations just attract certain personalities over and over again. SB129 proves that Bikini Bottom is a pattern that keeps repeating itself across time. The same souls keep finding each other, playing out the same stories, whether they're cavemen, modern fish, or chrome robots in the future. Some things never change, and maybe that's exactly how they're supposed to be. This sets up everything we need to know about Bikini Bottom's history. Now let's move on to which shows us something that basically proves these characters have been stuck in the same patterns forever. The episode takes us way back to caveman times where we meet SpongeGar, Patar, and Squog, the prehistoric versions of our main characters. The whole setup starts with these 3 cavemen living in primitive versions of the same houses we know today. SpongeGar lives in a fern-covered pineapple, Patar under a rock, and Squog in what looks like a monkey head statue. Right from the start, you can see the same personality types playing out exactly like they do in modern times. SpongeGar is walking his pet Dinosaur Gary, leaving a trail of slime everywhere. Squog sees this mess on his walkway and gets angry, just like modern Squidward would. He tries to tell SpongeGar to control his pet, but SpongeGar doesn't get it. Then Squog slips on the slime and crashes into Patar's rock, and Patar comes out acting exactly like Patrick, all friendly and dumb. The whole thing builds up when they're hanging out and SpongeGar is making bubbles with some primitive bubble-making device. They're having fun making it rain by clapping, but then lightning strikes the bubble machine and sets it on fire. This is where everything changes. All 3 of them are scared of the fire at first. Squog tries to touch it and burns his hand. SpongeGar and Patar do the same thing and also get burned. But then SpongeGar has this moment where he looks back and forth between Squog's stick and the fire. You can literally see the wheels turning in his head. He figures out that if he puts food on the stick and holds it over the fire, it tastes better. This is the moment fire gets invented in Bikini Bottom. SpongeGar shares this discovery with Squog, and Squog immediately recognizes how smart this is. There's even a little speech bubble with Albert Einstein's face, showing that Squog thinks SpongeGar is a genius. They start cooking everything they can find, from plants to rocks, to even prehistoric Mr. Krabs. The cooking scene shows just how much this discovery changed everything. They go crazy roasting anything they can get their hands on. SpongeGar cooks vines and grass, Squog turns rocks into popcorn somehow, and Patar, being Patar, tries to eat his own loincloth after cooking it. They eat so much cooked food that they all get fat and satisfied. It's like watching the birth of civilization through the lens of 3 idiots discovering barbecue. But here's where it gets interesting. Once they discover fire, they all want to own it. They start fighting over who gets to keep the burning log. SpongeGar, Patar, and Squog end up chasing each other around, stealing the fire back and forth, setting traps, and basically destroying their friendship over this new technology. The fighting gets so bad that they're literally rolling down cliffs chasing this burning log. Patar sets up traps, Squog tries to scare them with fake monster pictures, and SpongeGar swings on vines trying to grab it. They're acting like kids fighting over a toy, except this toy is literally the foundation of human civilization. Eventually, rain puts out the fire and they're all left sitting there with nothing. Squog tries to complain about it but gets struck by lightning, and SpongeGar and Patar end up roasting marshmallows over his burnt body. Talk about adding insult to injury. What's really crazy about this episode is that it shows Squog as the one who understands the importance of the discovery. When SpongeGar shows him how to cook food, Squog immediately gets it and calls him a genius. Modern Squidward would never admit SpongeBob was smart about anything, but prehistoric Squog recognizes innovation when he sees it. This episode basically proves that these 3 have been trapped in the same cycle forever. Even when they make a world-changing discovery like fire, they end up fighting over it and ruining everything. The same personalities that caused problems in modern Bikini Bottom were causing the exact same problems millions of years ago. The really controversial part is that this episode suggests progress doesn't actually change anything about these characters. They discovered fire, which should have been a huge step forward for society, but they immediately used it to fight each other. Makes you wonder if any of the technology and progress in modern Bikini Bottom actually matters when the people stay exactly the same. Moving forward, Atlantis SquarePantis shows us that Bikini Bottom, that the SpongeBob universe has deep connections to legendary civilizations that have been around for millions of years. The whole adventure starts when SpongeBob and Patrick find half of an ancient amulet while bubble blowing. When they take it to the museum, Squidward recognizes it as the missing piece of the Amulet of Atlantis. This isn't just some random artifact. According to Squidward, Atlantis was this incredible civilization where the streets were lined with gold and street lamps were made of diamonds. What makes this really interesting is how Squidward explains that all the inventions we take for granted were actually given to the underwater world by the Atlanteans. These people were way ahead of their time in art, money, and weapons. They basically shaped the entire foundation of underwater civilization before mysteriously disappearing one day. When they put the two halves of the amulet together, a magical bus appears that takes them directly to Atlantis. This shows that there are still connections between Bikini Bottom and these ancient places. The technology is so advanced that the bus runs on song instead of gas, which seems impossible but totally works in this universe. The bus itself is pretty wild. It has luxury seating and a robot driver, but the weirdest part is the fuel system. The robot explains that Atlanteans find fossil fuels counterintuitive and developed song as an alternative energy source. The more you sing about your desires, the closer to Atlantis you get. This forces each character to reveal what they really want through song. SpongeBob sings about wanting to see the oldest living bubble. Mr. Krabs dreams about lands where it rains money. Sandy wants a place where being smart matters more than being pretty. And Squidward fantasizes about artistic paradise. Even Plankton sneaks aboard and sings about stealing advanced weapons. These songs basically power their journey and show what drives each character. Once they get to Atlantis, everything Squidward said turns out to be true, but even more impressive. The city has futuristic buildings with spires and bubbles, technology that can turn any object into ice cream, machines that shrink people down to fight germs, and art so realistic you can step into the paintings. This place makes modern Bikini Bottom look like a primitive village. The Lord Royal Highness explains that Atlanteans used to spend all their time building weapons to defend themselves, but they gave up warfare long ago to focus on knowledge and harmony. This shows that even the most advanced civilizations go through the same struggles with war and peace that regular societies do. They literally locked away all their weapons as an example of what you need to do to live in harmony. What's really crazy is that they have the oldest living bubble, which is over 1 million years old and was brought from their home planet billions of light years away. This means Atlanteans aren't even originally from this ocean. They're aliens who colonized the area and brought their advanced technology with them. The bubble represents their entire history and connection to their original home. The episode shows how each character gets lost in what Atlantis offers them. Mr. Krabs goes nuts in the treasure room, filling his houndstooth pants with gold. Sandy gets obsessed with the scientific equipment and invents a device that lets her eat underwater without removing her helmet. Squidward finds artistic inspiration in the Hall of Arts, where he can literally step into paintings and be part of the artwork. When SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally pop both the fake tourist bubble and the real ancient one, the Atlanteans want to arrest them. But then Plankton shows up in a giant tank that he thinks shoots missiles, but it actually just shoots ice cream. Even their weapons are designed for peace instead of destruction. This shows how far Atlantis has evolved beyond their warlike past. The episode ends with the Lord Royal Highness being so fed up with visitors that he has the amulet thrown in the trash. He specifically says they can't survive any more visitors like SpongeBob and his friends. This suggests that Bikini Bottom residents are known for being destructive tourists who mess up ancient civilizations. This episode basically proves that Bikini Bottom exists in a universe where legendary places like Atlantis are real and accessible. The fact that museum displays talk about these civilizations like established history shows that everyone knows about them. Bikini Bottom is part of a much bigger world with ancient alien colonies, advanced technology, and mythological cities. If Atlantis is real and gave technology to the underwater world, then maybe other legendary places exist too and have influenced Bikini Bottom's development over the years. But before we continue the video, subscribe to our channel. Now let's move on to our main characters' backstories, starting with SpongeBob himself. Grandma's Kisses shows us something really important about how SpongeBob became the person he is today, and it all comes down to the love and support he got from his family. The episode starts with SpongeBob visiting his grandmother, and you can immediately see how much joy he gets from simple family traditions. He's excited about fresh-baked cookies, story time, and sweaters made with love. This is SpongeBob's core personality being shaped by unconditional family love. What really matters here is how his grandmother treats him. She doesn't judge him for being different or childlike. She encourages his enthusiasm and makes him feel special just for being himself. When SpongeBob gets embarrassed at work because people laugh at his grandmother's kiss on his forehead, he decides he needs to grow up and act more mature. The work situation reveals something important about SpongeBob's character. Charlie and the other customers mock him for getting kisses from his grandma, calling him a big baby who wears diapers and plays with dolls. But SpongeBob's first instinct is to defend his relationship with his grandmother. He says there's nothing wrong with getting kisses from your grandma. This shows that his values were already formed by his upbringing. Patrick tries to help by teaching SpongeBob how to be a man. They practice saying tax exemption, listening to freeform jazz, and wearing fake sideburns. This whole sequence is basically showing how society tries to force people to abandon what makes them happy in order to fit in. Patrick represents peer pressure trying to convince SpongeBob that his natural personality is wrong. But here's where it gets interesting. When SpongeBob tries to reject his grandmother's affection and act like an adult, he becomes miserable. His grandmother respects his wishes, but starts treating Patrick like the beloved grandchild instead. SpongeBob watches Patrick get all the cookies, stories, presents, and love that he's giving up. The contrast between what SpongeBob gets as an adult versus what Patrick gets as a baby is telling. SpongeBob gets steamed coral instead of cookies, technical manuals instead of storybooks, and office supplies instead of handmade sweaters. Meanwhile, Patrick gets the cookie-eating hat, warm milk, bibs, and kisses for his boo-boos. The episode is basically saying that adult rewards are boring and meaningless compared to genuine love and care. The breaking point comes when SpongeBob realizes what he's losing. He throws a massive tantrum crying about wanting cookies, milk, sweaters with love, diapers, his wagon, his teddy bear, and kisses on his boo-boos. This is about SpongeBob understanding that his pure-hearted nature is actually his strength. His grandmother's response is perfect. She tells him that he doesn't have to be a baby to get her love, and that no matter how grown up he gets, he'll always be her little baby boo. Most importantly, she says he can kiss his grandma and still be an adult. This wisdom shapes SpongeBob's entire worldview. This episode basically explains how SpongeBob became who he is. He was raised by people who celebrated his individuality instead of trying to change him. His grandmother taught him that showing love and affection isn't something to be ashamed of. She showed him that being genuine and enthusiastic about simple pleasures is actually a good thing. The controversial part? SpongeBob's childish behavior that everyone mocks is actually the result of being loved unconditionally. While other characters become cynical and jaded, SpongeBob stays optimistic because his family never made him feel bad for being himself. His pure-hearted nature was carefully nurtured by people who understood that happiness comes from embracing who you really are, not from trying to fit other people's expectations. The episode also shows how SpongeBob learned to balance being true to himself while still functioning in adult society. He can wear fake sideburns and eat cookies at the same time. He doesn't have to choose between being authentic and being accepted. This lesson from his grandmother is probably why SpongeBob can work at the Krusty Krab and still maintain his optimistic outlook, even when people like Squidward constantly try to bring him down. Now let's talk about SpongeBob's driving school backstory. No Free Rides shows us the foundation of one of SpongeBob's most important relationships and reveals something crucial about his character. SpongeBob has been failing his driving test over and over again, but he never gives up on trying to learn the right way. The episode starts with SpongeBob taking what the narrator calls the last test for the year. If he doesn't pass, he'll have to repeat another whole year of boating school. SpongeBob crashes into the camera operator, hits pedestrians, and ends up with a score of 6 out of 600 needed to pass. When he finds out he failed, he's actually excited about spending another year in Mrs. Puff's class. Mrs. Puff is horrified at the thought of another year with SpongeBob. She's so desperate to get rid of him that she offers extra credit, which requires him to write just a 10-word sentence about what he learned in boating school. This should be simple, but SpongeBob turns it into an ordeal because he wants to do it perfectly. SpongeBob spends forever sharpening his pencil, breaks it multiple times, switches to a pen because it's one of the most permanent of all writing utensils, and then has a complete meltdown trying to finish the sentence. He gets hand cramps, starts sweating, and can't handle the pressure. When Mrs. Puff finally sees his paper, it's mostly pictures instead of words, but she passes him anyway just to get him out of her life. Even though he technically passed, SpongeBob tells Mrs. Puff that he doesn't feel like he really did anything. He knows he didn't earn it properly, but Mrs. Puff convinces him that's how extra credit is supposed to feel. SpongeBob wants to learn correctly, even when he's given an easy way out. Mrs. Puff realizes she made a huge mistake and decides to steal SpongeBob's boat to prevent disaster. She puts on a ski mask and tries to drive away with it, but SpongeBob is sleeping in the boat and wakes up during the theft. What follows is a crazy chase where SpongeBob gets dragged through giant clams, cheese graters, and educational television, but refuses to let go of his boat. The episode ends with both of them crashing and Mrs. Puff going to jail. But even then, SpongeBob wants to keep taking lessons from her, and he arranges for her to give free driving lessons to the warden so she can get out early. And here's what's really messed up about this whole situation. SpongeBob's dedication to proper learning actually makes him more dangerous than if he just gave up. His enthusiasm and persistence create chaos, but they come from a genuine desire to do things the right way. Mrs. Puff's attempt to take shortcuts and pass him without proper training leads to even bigger problems. This episode establishes the pattern for their relationship throughout the series, where she's constantly torn between helping him and protecting society from his driving. Now let's talk about SpongeBob's passion. Help Wanted is where everything starts for SpongeBob, and it shows us exactly what kind of worker he is from day one. This episode proves that SpongeBob was literally born for his job at Krusty Krab. The episode opens with SpongeBob waking up completely pumped about applying for a job at the Krusty Krab. He's been dreaming about this moment for years. He does his morning routine, works out with a barbell made of stuffed animals, and runs through town yelling, "I'm ready!" This is someone who has prepared their whole life for this opportunity. When SpongeBob gets to the Krusty Krab, he almost chickens out, but Patrick gives him a pep talk. Patrick reminds him that his first words were, "May I take your order?" and that he made a spatula out of toothpicks in wood shop. These details show that SpongeBob has been obsessed with food service since he was a baby. Mr. Krabs and Squidward don't want to hire SpongeBob. When he trips over a nail and bounces around the restaurant like a pinball, Mr. Krabs tells him he doesn't even have his sea legs. So Mr. Krabs gives him what he thinks is an impossible task: find a hydrodynamic spatula with port and starboard attachments and turbo drive. Instead of giving up, SpongeBob takes notes, salutes Mr. Krabs, and immediately goes to find one. Mr. Krabs and Squidward laugh because they made up a fake spatula just to get rid of him. While SpongeBob is out shopping, 5 buses full of hungry anchovies show up at the Krusty Krab. The anchovies go crazy, creating chaos and nearly destroying the restaurant. Mr. Krabs and Squidward end up hanging from a pole, thinking they're gonna die. Then SpongeBob shows up like a superhero with the exact spatula Mr. Krabs asked for. Somehow he found the one hydrodynamic spatula that existed. He immediately goes into the kitchen and starts cooking. What happens next is pure magic. SpongeBob shoots patties with his eyes, chops vegetables with incredible speed, and creates perfect burgers with smiley faces made of ketchup and mustard. He serves hundreds of Krabby Patties in minutes, feeding all the anchovies and sending them away happy. Mr. Krabs is amazed and calls it the finest fast foodsmanship he's ever seen. He immediately hires SpongeBob on the spot. This episode establishes everything important about SpongeBob's character. His work ethic is insane. His connection to the Krabby Patty is instant and natural, and he saves the restaurant on his first day through pure passion and skill. SpongeBob found that impossible spatula when anyone else would have given up, showing the commitment that makes him essential to the Krusty Krab's success. Now let's move on to the next main character, Patrick. I'm with Stupid reveals something really ugly about Patrick that most people miss. This episode shows that Patrick is deeply insecure about being dumb, and he'll throw his best friend under the bus to feel better about himself. The episode starts with Patrick frantically cleaning his house because his parents are coming to visit for Starfish Day. When SpongeBob asks what's wrong, Patrick breaks down crying and says his parents think he's dumber than a sack of diapers. Patrick is genuinely hurt by how his parents treat him. They hold his hand to walk him around his own house, congratulate him for putting drinks in cups, and act like basic tasks are major achievements. They literally say, "Pats for Patrick," and treat him like a toddler. SpongeBob offers to help by pretending to be really dumb, so Patrick looks smart by comparison. But instead of sticking to the plan, Patrick gets drunk on feeling superior for the first time in his life. He starts making fun of SpongeBob's clothes, his shape, and even suggests he wears makeup. The worst part comes when SpongeBob tries to end the charade. He explains the whole plan and tries to act normal, but Patrick won't let him. He tells his fake parents that he taught SpongeBob how to talk in just 3 minutes. Patrick has completely abandoned the original plan because he likes feeling smart. When SpongeBob desperately tries to prove he's intelligent, Patrick shoots him down every time. He's actively working against his best friend just to maintain the illusion that he's the smart one. SpongeBob finally has a complete breakdown and crashes through the wall. Then comes the twist. Janet and Marty aren't even Patrick's real parents, they're just random people who got lost. Patrick's actual parents show up and treat him exactly the same way. This episode shows that Patrick's friendship with SpongeBob is built on need more than genuine affection. Patrick's insecurity runs so deep that he'll sacrifice his best friend's dignity just to experience being the smart one for a few hours. Patrick's betrayal shows his insecurity, and now we'll see how it turns into jealousy when SpongeBob succeeds. Big Pink Loser shows us the dark side of Patrick's friendship with SpongeBob and reveals how jealousy can poison even the closest relationships. This episode establishes Patrick's biggest character flaw, his inability to accept that SpongeBob is simply better at most things. The episode starts when Patrick accidentally receives one of SpongeBob's trophies and gets excited about winning his first award. But when SpongeBob points out the trophy has his name on it, Patrick breaks down crying because he's never won anything. SpongeBob opens his closet, which is packed with trophies and awards. Patrick's reaction is pure jealousy. He doesn't celebrate his friend's success, he gets upset that he's never accomplished anything. Instead of being happy for SpongeBob, he compares himself and feels inadequate. SpongeBob tries to help Patrick earn his own award by getting him a job at the Krusty Krab, but Patrick fails at everything. He eats the food instead of delivering it, tells customers this is Patrick when they ask if it's the Krusty Krab, and sweeps with the wrong end of the broom. Then Patrick decides to copy everything SpongeBob does. He dresses like him, talks like him, and follows him around doing the exact same actions. The copying gets so extreme that Patrick even copies SpongeBob's thoughts. SpongeBob gets frustrated and mocks Patrick, calling him the laziest, pinkest starfish in Bikini Bottom. This works because Patrick realizes being called a big pink loser hurts his feelings. The episode ends with Patrick receiving a trophy for doing absolutely nothing longer than anyone else. He gets his award, but only for being lazy. This establishes that Patrick's friendship with SpongeBob is complicated by jealousy and insecurity rather than genuine support. Before I tell you about Squidward, subscribe to our channel. Moving on to Squidward's journey, Culture Shock reveals the tragic heart of his character and shows us why he's so bitter all the time. This episode establishes Squidward as a failed artist who genuinely believes he has talent, but the world keeps proving him wrong. The episode starts with the Krusty Krab having no customers despite offering a free salad bar. Squidward is reading a ballet magazine and imagining his head on the dancers' bodies. This immediately shows us that Squidward dreams of being a performer and sees himself as an artist trapped in a dead-end job. When Mr. Krabs asks for ideas to bring in customers, Squidward jumps at the chance to suggest a talent show. His eyes turn to stars and he talks about bringing culture to the cultural wasteland of Bikini Bottom. You can see how much this means to him. This is his big break, his chance to finally show everyone his artistic genius. Squidward takes complete control of the show and acts like he's already a star. When SpongeBob shows him bubble tricks and absorption acts, Squidward dismisses them as uncultured. He tells SpongeBob that what people want is culture, not dancing bubbles. The night of the show, Squidward calls it the first annual Squidward Tentacles talent show. He tells the other performers that this is his shot at the big time. When Squidward finally performs, he comes out in a blue leotard and does this elaborate interpretive dance with classical music and birds. But the audience sits in stunned silence and then starts booing and throwing tomatoes at him. The crowd chants, "No talent! No talent!" while Squidward screams back, "You bottom feeders! You don't even know talent!" He's so convinced he's an artist that he blames the audience for not understanding his genius rather than accepting that maybe his performance wasn't good. Then comes the twist that makes this episode really sad. SpongeBob goes on stage to mop up the tomatoes and the crowd goes wild. They love watching him clean. Every time Squidward tries to come back out, the audience goes silent. But when SpongeBob appears with his mop, they cheer. This episode shows that Squidward's artistic dreams are his whole identity. When the world rejects his art, it's rejecting who he believes he is. That's why he becomes so bitter and cynical throughout the series. He's a failed artist who has to watch less talented people succeed while his genius goes unrecognized. Squidward's failure as an artist made him bitter, and now we'll see how SpongeBob's success at work kills what little drive he has left. Employee of the Month reveals something really important about Squidward's work history that most people miss. This episode shows that Squidward actually has the potential to be a great employee, but SpongeBob's constant success has completely destroyed his motivation over the years. The episode starts with SpongeBob excitedly telling Squidward that today begins the judging for Employee of the Month. Squidward's response is telling he calls the award a scam and says Mr. Krabs only gives it to SpongeBob, so he'll work harder for no extra money. But when SpongeBob says Squidward could win if he tried harder, something changes in Squidward's attitude. What's really revealing is the wall of Employee of the Month photos, which is completely covered with SpongeBob's picture. SpongeBob has won 26 months in a row. Squidward calls it the Wall of Shame, but you can see this bothers him more than he lets on. The turning point happens when SpongeBob claims he's been better than Squidward for 26 months. Squidward snaps completely and declares that he's going to prove he's far more competent than SpongeBob and win the award. This is huge because Squidward usually doesn't care about work at all. What follows is an all-out war between them. They sabotage each other all night, dig holes, set traps, and basically destroy each other trying to get to work first. When they finally both arrive at the Krusty Krab, they go crazy trying to outwork each other. Here's the key part. Squidward is actually good at the job when he tries. He cleans tables, brings Mr. Krabs flowers and chocolate, and even tries to cook Krabby Patties. He tells SpongeBob there's nothing to this patty flipping, and says he'll easily double the output. Squidward has skills, he just never uses them. The episode ends with both of them working so hard that they make too many Krabby Patties and blow up the restaurant. They're both asking Mr. Krabs who won the award, but he's too busy worrying about all the free food flying around. This episode proves that Squidward's laziness is because he's given up trying. After watching SpongeBob win 26 months in a row, Squidward convinced himself the award was meaningless rather than admit he was being outworked. The tragedy is that SpongeBob's success has made Squidward stop trying, turning him into the bitter, unmotivated worker we usually see. Squidward gave up trying after losing to SpongeBob, and now we'll see his jealousy explode when Squilliam shows off his success. House Fancy shows what really drives Squidward's desperate need to look sophisticated and his bitter rivalry with Squilliam. This episode reveals how insecure Squidward is about his social status. The episode starts with Squidward watching his favorite TV show about fancy houses. He's got his tea and cookies ready, totally absorbed in this world of luxury. This tells us everything about what Squidward wants to be seen as cultured and refined. Then Squilliam calls. You can hear the jealousy in Squidward's voice when he realizes who it is. He calls Squilliam my lifelong rival who I met in high school band class, showing this competition has been going on forever. When Squidward hears someone talking to Squilliam in the background, he gets suspicious. The reveal is brutal. Squilliam is actually on the show, getting featured as this fancy homeowner. The host is going crazy over Squilliam's house with its golden doorknobs, custom bathroom, jewel-covered toilet paper holder, and rooftop garden, with a huge sculpture of Squilliam's unibrow made of golden doorknobs. Squidward watches in horror as his rival gets all the attention he desperately wants. When Squilliam shows off his whirlpool elevator, you can see Squidward getting madder. This is everything Squidward dreams of: recognition, status, respect from fancy people. Squidward snaps and calls the show, lying that his house is far fancier than that slob Squilliam's. Pure jealousy talking. He doesn't actually have a fancy house, but he can't stand Squilliam being better than him on TV. When the host agrees to visit in 2 hours, Squidward panics. He starts frantically fixing his house, covering stains with furniture and holes with paintings. Everything goes wrong. SpongeBob tries to help but destroys everything, paints the whole living room, breaks the sofa, then the vacuum explodes and destroys the entire house. But here's the twist. When the TV crew sees the wreckage, the host thinks it's brilliant modern art. He calls it post-primitive movement and crowns Squidward House Fancy Prince of the Year, an honor that was supposed to go to Squilliam. Squilliam breaks down crying while Squidward celebrates. This shows how fake these status competitions are. Squidward wins by accident, but acts like he deserves it. His rivalry with Squilliam makes him lie and risk everything, just to avoid admitting Squilliam is more successful. It's pretty sad when you think about it. Now let's talk about Mr. Krabs' background. Shell of a Man gives us the best look at Mr. Krabs' military past and shows how his Navy experience shaped the tough, disciplined leader we know today. This episode reveals that Mr. Krabs was once a respected naval officer. The episode starts when Mr. Krabs digs up his old Navy memory chest for a reunion with his shipmates. Inside, we see his military life, his first tattoo, his manly toughness trophy, and photos of his tough crew with intimidating nicknames like All Iron Eye, Mutton Chop, Torpedo Belly, and Lockjaw Jones. Mr. Krabs' nickname was Armor Abs Krabs, earned by being the toughest of the tough. When SpongeBob punches his abs to test them, SpongeBob's entire arm disintegrates, proving Mr. Krabs still has that military toughness. The military influence shows when SpongeBob uses Navy language in the kitchen, calling potatoes men, and talking about battle stations. This reveals that Mr. Krabs runs the Krusty Krab like a military ship with himself as commanding officer. When Mr. Krabs molts and loses his shell, he's devastated because he can't face his Navy buddies looking vulnerable. He says, Armor Abs Krabs can't show up like this, all pink and soft and unmanly. His military identity is still central to who he is. The reunion shows how respected Mr. Krabs was in the Navy. His shipmates still call him Armor Abs and want to give him the trophy for manly toughness. They remember him as a legendary tough guy. This episode explains why Mr. Krabs runs the Krusty Krab with such military discipline. He treats employees like crew members, expects instant obedience, and values toughness. His Navy background shaped him into an authoritative leader who demands respect and efficiency from his crew. Mr. Krabs' military past explains why he runs the Krusty Krab with toughness and discipline, and now we'll see how his greed and pride ruined the most important friendship he ever had with Plankton. Friend or Foe tells the heartbreaking story of how Mr. Krabs and Plankton went from being best friends to bitter enemies, and it all comes down to one recipe that destroyed everything between them. This episode shows that their rivalry is about a friendship that was torn apart by greed, betrayal, and wounded pride. The episode reveals that Krabs and Plankton were born on the same day and were literally friends from birth. As babies, they played together, and as toddlers, they shared birthday cakes. They were inseparable until they hit elementary school, where both of them became outcasts. Plankton was the smart kid who got picked on for being a brainatron, while Krabs was mocked for wearing clothes made from rags because his family was poor. The bullies at school called Krabs Rag Boy and made fun of his trash-made clothes. When they stuffed Plankton into a straw and shot him like a spitball, Krabs stood up for his friend. This shows that their friendship was built on mutual protection. They were both rejects who had each other's backs against the world. Everything changed when they discovered Stinky Burgers, the only burger joint in town. The owner, Stinky, was making tons of money selling terrible burgers to kids, but he treated Krabs and Plankton like dirt, making them go around back and calling them nerds and yahoos. When Krabs saw Stinky's wealth, his eyes turned into dollar signs. When Plankton saw the kids respecting Stinky, he started talking about ruling their minds. They decided to team up and make a better burger. Working together in their secret hideout at the dump, they created what would become the Krabby Patty. At first, they were partners. Krabs handled the money while Plankton handled the science. But success corrupted both of them in different ways. Here's where the stories diverge. Each character tells a different version of what happened when they fought over the recipe. In Krabs' version, Plankton becomes power-hungry and talks about ruling the world with the recipe. In Plankton's version, Krabs becomes money-obsessed and only cares about profit, but Karen's security footage reveals the truth they accidentally poisoned Old Man Jenkins with their first burger, and when they argued about whose fault it was, they ripped the recipe in half. The real tragedy is that both versions show the same thing: success changed them. Whether it was Krabs getting greedy for money or Plankton getting drunk on power, they both lost sight of what mattered: their friendship. When the recipe tore, it symbolically tore their relationship apart too. After the split, Plankton took his half of the recipe and tried to make chum burgers. They were disgusting. Meanwhile, Krabs accidentally discovered the perfect recipe when ingredients fell into his ruined batch. The kids loved Krabs' Krabby Patties and rejected Plankton's chum, cementing their roles as successful businessman versus failed villain. The episode ends with a fake reconciliation where Plankton pretends to want their friendship back, only to steal the formula again. This shows how deep the damage goes. Even when they try to reconnect, the old patterns of betrayal kick in immediately. What makes this story really sad is that Plankton admits the truth. All these years I've been trying to steal your formula, but I was really just trying to steal back our friendship. His obsession with the Krabby Patty is about proving he was right all along and getting back what he lost when their partnership ended. This episode explains why their rivalry is so personal and bitter. They're not just business competitors, they're former best friends who betrayed each other at the moment of their greatest success. Every time Plankton tries to steal the formula, he's really trying to go back to when they were partners. And every time Krabs stops him, he's protecting not just his business, but the symbol of his victory over his former friend. Krabs lost his best friend to greed, and in Penny Foolish, we see that same greed drive him insane over just one penny. Penny Foolish shows just how deep Mr. Krabs' money obsession really goes, and reveals that his greed is a genuine mental condition that makes him lose all sense of reality over a single cent. The episode starts with Mr. Krabs shopping at a discount grocery store, trying to use coupons that expired 30 years ago. When he gets 10 cents in change, he's genuinely excited about getting 2 nickels. This shows that his poverty-stricken past has made him value every single coin. Then Mr. Krabs sees SpongeBob pick up what looks like a penny from the street. That's when his obsession kicks in. While driving home, he starts hallucinating that everything around him is turning into pennies. His radio dial, his steering wheel, even the moon in the sky. Mr. Krabs literally screams, "I gotta have that penny!" This is a psychological breakdown over 1 cent. His anxiety about money has reached the point where he can't function normally when he thinks someone else has found free money. The next day, Mr. Krabs becomes completely obsessed with getting SpongeBob's penny. He makes SpongeBob check every pocket, then shakes him so hard that SpongeBob's brain falls out. When that doesn't work, he builds an entire movie theater just to charge SpongeBob 1 penny admission. When SpongeBob says he doesn't have a penny, Mr. Krabs destroys the whole theater with a wrecking ball. Finally, Mr. Krabs breaks into SpongeBob's house with a metal detector. The twisted ending reveals that SpongeBob never had a penny at all. He picked up a piece of gum that turned out to be a $500 bill. While Mr. Krabs is outside digging holes still looking for the non-existent penny, SpongeBob tosses aside real money. This episode shows that Mr. Krabs' money obsession is rooted in deep financial anxiety from his poor childhood. His poverty-stricken past has made him so paranoid about missing out on money that he'll destroy property and break into homes over a single cent. Mr. Krabs goes crazy over a penny, and in Krusty Towers, he takes that same greed and turns his restaurant into a hotel for more money. Krusty Towers shows Mr. Krabs' relentless drive to expand his business empire and reveals how his entrepreneurial spirit can sometimes blind him to reality. This episode demonstrates that Mr. Krabs is always looking for new ways to make money, even if it means completely transforming his successful restaurant. The episode starts when Mr. Krabs converts the Krusty Krab into a luxury hotel after staying at an expensive hotel during a fast food convention. He was amazed by how much they charged $25 for a hamburger, and realized he could make way more money if he applied the same pricing model to Krabby Patties through room service. Mr. Krabs adopts the hotel's motto, "We shall never deny a guest even the most ridiculous request." This shows his willingness to completely change his business model if he thinks it'll bring in more cash. He forces SpongeBob and Squidward to become hotel employees, showing how his money obsession affects his workers. The problems start immediately. Regular customers like Dave can't just grab a quick lunch anymore, they have to rent a room first. This shows how Mr. Krabs' greed can actually hurt his core business. When Patrick becomes a guest, he makes increasingly ridiculous demands that Squidward has to fulfill. Things get worse when Squidward quits and becomes a guest himself, exploiting the never deny a guest policy to torture Mr. Krabs. Squidward orders disgusting food, demands room redesigns, and even gets an indoor swimming pool built in his room. The hotel collapses when Patrick cannonballs into the indoor pool, sending everyone to the hospital. The medical bill is $15,000, which destroys any profit Mr. Krabs might have made. But instead of learning his lesson, he immediately gets excited about the hospital racket and wants to send everyone to medical school. This episode shows that Mr. Krabs' business instincts can be both his strength and weakness. His drive to expand and make money is impressive, but his greed makes him ignore practical problems and customer needs. Now let's move on to Sandy. T at the Tree Dome introduces Sandy Cheeks as the most unique character in Bikini Bottom, a land squirrel living underwater who challenges everything the sea creatures thought they knew about their world. This episode establishes Sandy as both a complete outsider and the perfect bridge between two completely different environments. The episode starts with SpongeBob jellyfish hunting when he spots Sandy fighting a giant clam. Right away, we see that Sandy is different from everyone else in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob has to look her up in his field guide because he's never seen a land squirrel before. She's literally a foreign species to him. But Sandy proves she's more than capable of handling herself underwater. She fights the giant clam with her bare hands, calling it about as ugly as homemade soup in her thick Texas accent. When SpongeBob tries to help with karate moves, Sandy shows him real martial arts by breaking a huge rock with one hand. What makes Sandy really stand out is her scientific approach to living underwater. She's built herself a completely artificial environment, the Tree Dome, using the finest polyurethane. That's a fancy word for plastic. She's literally created a bubble of land life in the middle of the ocean, which no one else in Bikini Bottom could pull off. The main conflict happens when SpongeBob visits Sandy's Tree Dome for tea. He discovers that her world is completely incompatible with his. There's no water inside, just air. SpongeBob starts drying out and nearly dies, but he's too embarrassed to ask for help because he claimed to love air. Sandy's scientific problem-solving saves the day. When she finds SpongeBob and Patrick dried out, she immediately gives them water-filled helmets so they can breathe underwater while visiting her air-filled home. This is pure scientific thinking, identifying the problem and creating technology to solve it. Sandy challenges Bikini Bottom's norms just by existing. She's the only character who brings land technology and thinking to an underwater world, proving that being different can be a strength. Sandy proves she's tough and smart, but then we see how much she struggles with missing home. Texas shows the emotional cost of Sandy's scientific adventure and reveals that living underwater is emotionally devastating. This episode establishes Sandy as an immigrant who gave up everything familiar to pursue her dreams. The episode starts with Sandy making a sand sculpture of Texas, but a wave destroys it. When SpongeBob asks, "What's a Texas?" Sandy sadly says, "It's nothing but a memory now." Sandy's depression becomes obvious when she refuses to do karate, build sandcastles, or go jellyfishing activities she normally loves. When SpongeBob releases a jellyfish and tells it to go back to where you belong, Sandy breaks down crying. Her song reveals the depth of her sacrifice. She sings about missing wide open skies, 20 acres, barbecues and pecan pies, an entire way of life she gave up for science. Sandy decides to leave Bikini Bottom entirely, packing her bags for Texas. This shows that homesickness is powerful enough to make her abandon her scientific work completely. SpongeBob tricks her into staying by insulting Texas, which makes Sandy chase them, revealing that her connection to Texas is part of her identity. The episode ends with Sandy realizing that home is where you're surrounded by critters that care about you. Like many immigrants, she discovers that home is the people who accept you. Now let's talk about Plankton. Plankton establishes the classic pattern that will define Plankton for the entire series: brilliant plans ruined by tiny problems and his own massive ego. This episode shows that Plankton is genuinely smart, but his arrogance always becomes his downfall. The episode starts with Plankton hiding inside a Krabby Patty trying to steal it. When Mr. Krabs catches him, Plankton declares, "I went to college." This immediately establishes two things about his character: he's educated, and he's obsessed with proving his intelligence to everyone. Plankton's first scheme shows his scientific genius. He creates a mind control device and successfully infiltrates SpongeBob's brain while he sleeps. He has blueprints, sophisticated equipment, and even a computer wife named Karen. The plan is genuinely impressive. He literally takes control of another person's body and makes them walk to his lab. But here's where Plankton's ego ruins everything. When he's about to get the Krabby Patty formula through his analyzer, SpongeBob starts describing how delicious the patty looks. Instead of staying focused on his goal, Plankton gets distracted by his appetite and jumps directly at the patty. This is the moment that defines Plankton's character forever. He had SpongeBob completely under his control. The plan was working perfectly, but his greed and impatience made him abandon the safe, smart approach for instant gratification. He literally jumps out of SpongeBob's head and lands in his own analyzer. The computer then reveals the brutal truth: Plankton, 1% evil, 99% hot gas. This is the show telling us exactly what Plankton is: mostly empty threats and big talk. His evil genius persona is just hot air covering up his real problem: he can't control himself. This episode sets up the template for every future Plankton scheme. He'll create elaborate plans that should work, but he always sabotages himself through impatience, ego, or underestimating simple obstacles. His intelligence is real, but his character flaws make him his own worst enemy. Plankton's genius is real, but his ego always destroys him, and the truth is he is just painfully lonely. FUN reveals the tragic truth about Plankton: he's desperately lonely. This episode shows that underneath all his schemes, Plankton actually craves the one thing he's never had: a real friend. The episode starts with Plankton stealing a Krabby Patty, but when SpongeBob catches him, something weird happens. Instead of fighting back, Plankton breaks down and calls himself a loser. He says, "You don't know what it's like to be a loser," and starts crying. His whole evil act is just covering up how sad and insecure he really is. When everyone in town calls Plankton a loser, we see how alone he really is. SpongeBob notices this and thinks, "I'll bet if he had just one friend, he wouldn't be such a meanie." That's basically the whole point of the episode right there. SpongeBob goes to the chum bucket and asks Plankton to hang out. Plankton's response is hilarious. He asks if SpongeBob knows how to induce thermonuclear fusion, instead of understanding what play means. This guy has been alone with his evil plans for so long that he doesn't even know how normal friendship works. The FUN song is where things get really interesting. When SpongeBob tries to explain fun, Plankton's version is F is for fire that burns down the whole town, U is for uranium bombs. But when SpongeBob teaches him the real version, Plankton actually loves it. The best moment is when Plankton says, "I feel all tingly inside, should we stop?" And SpongeBob tells him, "That's how you're supposed to feel." Plankton has never felt genuine happiness before. When he says, "I like it, let's do it again," you realize he's been missing this his whole life. The ending breaks your heart. When SpongeBob finds the Krabby Patty in Plankton's pocket, Plankton admits, "You showed me friendship. That's all I ever really wanted." But then he grabs the patty anyway and crashes into a wall. This episode shows that Plankton's not actually evil, he's just lonely and using villainy to get attention. His schemes are about mattering to someone in a world that treats him like a joke. Now that we've met the main characters, let's talk about the place that brings them all together, the Krusty Krab. This little restaurant became the center of everything in Bikini Bottom. But before I tell you about that, make sure you're subscribed. Now let's go back to Help Wanted, the very first episode that started it all. This episode proves that the Krusty Krab's entire success depends on one thing: SpongeBob's incredible talent and passion for cooking. Without him, the restaurant would have failed on day one. The episode starts with SpongeBob getting ready for the biggest day of his life, applying for a job at the Krusty Krab. He's been dreaming about this moment for years and calls it the finest eating establishment ever established for eating. This shows that SpongeBob specifically wants to work at this restaurant because he genuinely believes in what it represents. When SpongeBob shows up, Mr. Krabs and Squidward immediately try to get rid of him. They don't think he's capable of doing the job, so they send him on what they think is an impossible task, finding a hydrodynamic spatula with port and starboard attachments and turbo drive. They're basically making up fancy words to describe a spatula that doesn't exist, just to get him to leave. But here's where SpongeBob's passion shows. While he's gone, a crisis hits the restaurant. 5 buses full of hungry anchovies arrive and completely overwhelm the place. Mr. Krabs and Squidward are literally drowning in a sea of customers, all screaming, "Meep!" They can't handle the demand at all. Without a proper cook, the Krusty Krab is completely helpless. Then SpongeBob returns with the impossible spatula. Not only did he find it, but it actually works exactly as described. When he asks, "Who's hungry?" and starts cooking, something magical happens. The montage shows SpongeBob flying around the kitchen, chopping vegetables with perfect precision, and creating Krabby Patties like he's conducting a symphony. The way SpongeBob cooks is pure art. He dances while he works, shoots ingredients with his eyes, and makes each patty with genuine love and creativity. He even decorates them with smiley faces made of ketchup and mustard. This shows that, for SpongeBob, making Krabby Patties is his passion. The results speak for themselves. Every single anchovy gets fed and leaves happy. Mr. Krabs makes a wheelbarrow full of money. The restaurant goes from complete disaster to massive success in minutes, all because SpongeBob showed up. Mr. Krabs calls it the finest fast foodsmanship I've ever seen and immediately hires SpongeBob. But when Patrick orders just one Krabby Patty at the end, SpongeBob goes completely overboard and makes dozens of them, showing that his passion sometimes creates its own problems. This episode establishes the fundamental truth of the series. The Krusty Krab is successful because SpongeBob treats cooking like an art form. He creates edible masterpieces with genuine love and enthusiasm. Without SpongeBob's unique talent and unstoppable passion, the Krusty Krab would just be another fast food place. With him, it becomes something special, a place where food is made with heart and soul. This episode shows that the real secret ingredient in every Krabby Patty is the love and artistry that SpongeBob puts into every single one. SpongeBob's passion makes the Krusty Krab extraordinary, but that same passion turns into perfectionism that nearly destroys him in the next story. Pickles shows how the Krusty Krab's reputation depends entirely on SpongeBob's ability to make perfect Krabby Patties every single time. This episode reveals that SpongeBob's perfectionism is both the restaurant's greatest strength and its biggest weakness. The episode starts with SpongeBob at the top of his game. He makes orders with incredible precision, rattling off ingredients in perfect order. First bun, then patty, followed by ketchup, mustard, pickles, extra onions, lettuce, cheese, tomatoes, and bun in that order. When Bubble Bass orders his ridiculously complicated burger, SpongeBob makes it perfectly without even writing it down. But then Bubble Bass claims there are no pickles on his burger and everything falls apart. The crowd gasps, Mr. Krabs has to give back $2, and SpongeBob's confidence is completely shattered. This one complaint destroys SpongeBob's entire sense of self-worth because his identity is built around being perfect. SpongeBob's reaction shows how dangerous perfectionism can be. He becomes so obsessed with getting the formula right that he can't function at all. He tries to make simple burgers, but gets completely confused. His brain basically breaks because one customer said he made a mistake. Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob home and Squidward takes over cooking. The results are disastrous, everything gets burned, customers complain, and the restaurant starts losing money. This proves that the Krusty Krab's success depends entirely on SpongeBob's perfectionist approach. At home, SpongeBob's perfectionism spreads to everything else. He can't even figure out how to sleep in his own bed or speak normally. His whole house becomes a disaster because if he can't be perfect at cooking, he can't be perfect at anything. When Mr. Krabs tries to help SpongeBob relearn cooking, it takes days. Finally, SpongeBob explodes about what he can't do, but accidentally makes a perfect burger while yelling. His muscle memory took over. The twist reveals Bubblebase was hiding the pickles under his tongue the whole time, scamming the restaurant. This episode shows that the Krusty Krab's reputation is incredibly fragile. One fake complaint nearly destroyed the business. But SpongeBob's perfectionism, while sometimes paralyzing, is what makes the restaurant special and keeps customers coming back. SpongeBob's need for perfection shows how weak the Krusty Krab really is, and Mr. Krabs proves it when he leaves the business to chase treasure. Shows what happens when Mr. Krabs gets so successful that he can afford to ignore his business and chase other interests. This episode reveals how success can make people lose focus on what actually made them successful in the first place. The episode starts with Mr. Krabs worried about having no customers, but then he gets completely distracted by SpongeBob and Patrick playing a treasure hunting board game. When he sees the fake gold doubloons, his eyes turn into dollar signs and he becomes obsessed. This shows that Mr. Krabs is so focused on money that even fake treasure gets him excited. Once Mr. Krabs starts playing the game, he completely abandons running his restaurant. When a hungry customer walks in asking for food, Mr. Krabs literally throws him out the door and says, "Can't you see we're closed?" This is huge. Mr. Krabs is turning away paying customers because he's too busy playing a game about finding treasure. The game becomes an addiction for Mr. Krabs. He wins 17 times in a row and plays from day into night. When SpongeBob and Patrick try to leave because they're exhausted, Mr. Krabs begs them to stay for one more game. He even follows SpongeBob home and shows up in his house still wanting to play. Here's where it gets really crazy. Mr. Krabs becomes so obsessed with the board game that he decides to make it real. He gets an actual pirate ship, dresses everyone in pirate costumes, and takes them on a real treasure hunt, using the game board as a map. He's spending money on ships and costumes instead of focusing on his restaurant. The treasure hunt shows how Mr. Krabs' priorities have completely changed. Instead of serving customers and making money through his business, he's chasing fantasies of instant wealth through buried treasure. He makes SpongeBob and Patrick walk 10,000 paces, forces them to sleep on the cold ground, and becomes a demanding pirate captain. When SpongeBob and Patrick discover that the treasure map is just their board game taped to paper, it's revealed that Mr. Krabs knew this all along. He was so desperate to find treasure that he was willing to drag his employees on a fake treasure hunt based on a children's game. The ending is perfect irony. When they actually find real treasure, the Flying Dutchman gives SpongeBob and Patrick real gold doubloons for digging it up, but gives Mr. Krabs just a plastic treasure chest based on a real treasure chest. The employee who was just doing his job for fun gets rewarded, while the boss who abandoned his business for greed gets a fake prize. This episode shows that the Krusty Krab's success had given Mr. Krabs enough security that he could afford to chase other interests. But instead of investing in his business or improving his restaurant, he gets distracted by get-rich-quick schemes. His success made him greedy for even more money, causing him to neglect the very business that made him successful in the first place. Mr. Krabs chases treasure and forgets what really matters, while Squidward learns the real treasure is the Krabby Patty. Just one bite proves that the Krabby Patty has achieved something no other food in Bikini Bottom has universal appeal that crosses all social and personality barriers. Even Squidward, the most cynical and stubborn character in the show, eventually becomes completely addicted to them. The episode starts with Squidward working at the register, watching customers eat Krabby Patties and calling them disgusting and garbage. He tells SpongeBob, "I hate Krabby Patties," with complete confidence. When SpongeBob finds this funny, Squidward doubles down and declares, "Never had one, never will." This shocks SpongeBob so much that he flips a patty through the ceiling. SpongeBob's reaction reveals how deeply the Krabby Patty is embedded in Bikini Bottom's culture. He literally can't understand how those words can be used together in a sentence. He pulls out a dictionary to check if it's even possible. All the customers appear in the kitchen to recite what's apparently a well-known saying. The only people who don't like a Krabby Patty have never tasted one. This moment shows that the Krabby Patty has become a cultural touchstone. Everyone in Bikini Bottom has accepted it as a universal truth that anyone who tries a Krabby Patty will love it. Squidward is literally the only person in town who's never had one. SpongeBob becomes obsessed with getting Squidward to try one, following him everywhere with patties. He tries every trick in the book, the airplane game, magic tricks, hiding in bubbles, popping out of the cash register, even handcuffing himself to Squidward. This desperation shows how important it is to SpongeBob that everyone love what he creates. When Squidward finally takes a tiny bite, his face lights up with joy before he catches himself and pretends it's horrible, putrid, poorly prepared. But the moment SpongeBob leaves, Squidward digs the stomped patty out of the ground and shoves it in his mouth, crying, "Oh, so delicious, all the wasted years!" This reveals that the Krabby Patty's appeal is so strong it can convert even the most resistant critic instantly. Squidward's transformation is immediate and complete. He becomes desperate for more, trying to order one but getting too excited. When SpongeBob eats the patty meant for a customer, Squidward considers eating one out of the garbage. He actually does eat almost everything in the trash can, trying to get to a discarded patty. The dream sequence shows how deeply the addiction has taken hold. Squidward dreams of marrying a Krabby Patty, having children with it, and growing old together. This is obsession on a romantic level. Squidward's midnight break-in at the Krusty Krab proves how far he'll go. He sneaks past SpongeBob's house, gets burned by the security system, and finally reaches the patty vault. When he sees hundreds of Krabby Patties, he gasps, "Holy shrimp!" I don't know where to start. The vault itself shows how valuable these burgers are. They're stored like treasure. When SpongeBob catches him, Squidward finally confesses, "Yes, I admit it, SpongeBob. I love Krabby Patties." He then goes completely crazy, eating dozens at once in every possible way. SpongeBob warns him about eating too many, but Squidward is too far gone to care. The ending is perfect. Squidward eats so many Krabby Patties that he literally explodes, ending up in an ambulance with his body parts separated. The paramedic says, "I remember my first Krabby Patty," suggesting this is a common experience in Bikini Bottom. This episode proves that the Krabby Patty has achieved true cultural dominance in Bikini Bottom. It's an addiction, a cultural touchstone, and a shared experience that brings the community together. Even the most cynical, art-loving, sophisticated character in town becomes a helpless addict after one bite. The episode also shows how the Krusty Krab has shaped Bikini Bottom's entire food culture. There's an established saying about Krabby Patties, security systems to protect them, and specialized storage vaults. The restaurant has created a food culture where loving Krabby Patties is seen as normal and not liking them is considered impossible. Squidward's journey from complete rejection to total addiction represents how the Krusty Krab has converted the entire town. No one is immune to the appeal, no matter how much they think they're above it. The restaurant's success is about creating something so universally appealing that resistance is futile. Now that we talked about Krusty Krabs, let's talk about the secret formula wars. Let's revisit the episode Plankton. This episode sets up the main conflict that drives the whole series and shows why Plankton's scientific approach always fails against SpongeBob's natural cooking skills. The episode starts with SpongeBob making a Krabby Patty like an artist, using a French accent and catching ingredients in his holes. When the patty starts moving, Mr. Krabs discovers Plankton hiding inside it. Plankton immediately declares, "When I discover your formula for Krabby Patties, I'll run you out of business. I went to college." This line is everything. Plankton thinks his education makes him better than everyone else. Mr. Krabs reveals that Plankton has been trying to steal the formula for years. This shows that Plankton's obsession with the secret recipe is the central conflict of the series. He's got a long history of failure that makes him desperate. Plankton's approach is pure science and manipulation. He tries to trick SpongeBob with fake gifts and birthday stories, even giving him a golden spatula with his name on it. When that fails, he uses a mind control device. His plan is actually pretty sophisticated with blueprints and control systems. He calls it his very elaborate and college-educated plan. The mind control actually works perfectly. Plankton successfully takes over SpongeBob's brain and makes him walk to the chum bucket. This proves that Plankton's scientific abilities are real and he's genuinely smart. His technology actually functions exactly as designed. But here's where everything falls apart. When Plankton is about to analyze the Krabby Patty, SpongeBob starts describing the burger with pure love. He talks about its tasty, juicy, scrumptious, warm, steamy goodness like he's writing poetry about food. SpongeBob lists the ingredients, but he's expressing genuine emotion about each component. Plankton gets completely distracted by his hunger and abandons his careful plan. Instead of staying focused on his scientific analysis, he jumps at the patty yelling, "Come to Papa!" Tons of like Sidek's, all that scientific training gets thrown away because he can't control himself when faced with actual good food. The computer then analyzes Plankton and reveals 1% evil, 99% hot gas. All his scientific genius and college education are mostly just empty talk. Meanwhile, SpongeBob casually walks away with the patty, having won without any plan at all. He didn't outsmart Plankton or break the technology, he just cooked with passion, and that was enough. Plankton ends up trapped in his own analyzer while SpongeBob walks home safe. The episode ends with Plankton desperately begging for the patty, but it's too late. His moment of weakness cost him everything. This episode establishes that the secret formula can't be stolen through science because cooking isn't really about ingredients. SpongeBob doesn't follow procedures or recipes, he cooks with passion and intuition. Plankton can build amazing technology and create sophisticated plans, but he can't copy the heart and soul that SpongeBob puts into every burger. The episode shows why Plankton can never win, no matter how many times he tries. He's trying to solve an emotional problem with scientific methods. He thinks cooking is just chemistry, but SpongeBob proves that it's an art form. The real secret is about loving what you do and caring about the people you're feeding, and that's something you can't steal, analyze, or replicate in a lab. Plankton failed because science can't replace passion, and it becomes clearer when his fight for the formula turns into a battle between loneliness and friendship. FUN shows that the Krabby Patty formula battle is about two completely different ways of looking at life, and for a brief moment, both Plankton and SpongeBob prove they can change their entire worldview. The episode starts with Plankton stealing a Krabby Patty, but when SpongeBob catches him, something unexpected happens. Instead of fighting, Plankton breaks down and calls himself a loser. When everyone in town celebrates SpongeBob and calls Plankton the most hated thing in Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob realizes that Plankton's evil behavior comes from being isolated. SpongeBob goes to the chum bucket and asks Plankton to play with him. Plankton's response shows how disconnected he is from normal life. He asks, "You know how to induce thermonuclear fusion?" instead of understanding what play means. This reveals that Plankton has spent so long focused on science and revenge that he's forgotten how to be human. The FUN song shows their completely different life philosophies. When SpongeBob explains that F is for friends who do stuff together, Plankton responds with F is for fire that burns down the whole town, U is for uranium bombs, N is for no survivors. But when SpongeBob teaches Plankton the real version, something amazing happens. Plankton actually starts to enjoy it. He says, "I feel all tingly inside," and discovers genuine happiness for the first time. They spend the day having fun together, and Karen notices that Plankton is going native and wearing square pants like SpongeBob. The episode shows that both characters can change. SpongeBob learns to see past someone's reputation and give them a chance. Plankton discovers that there's more to life than revenge and conquest. But then comes the test. When SpongeBob finds the Krabby Patty in Plankton's pocket, Plankton admits, "You showed me friendship. That's all I ever really wanted." For a second, it seems like he's choosing friendship over the formula. But then he grabs the patty and declares, "Being evil is too much fun." This reveals the tragic truth about Plankton. He had a real chance at happiness and friendship, but he chose his old obsession instead. This episode proves that the secret formula represents two different approaches to life. SpongeBob's approach is about friendship, joy, and sharing good things with others. Plankton's approach is about conquest, proving superiority, and taking what belongs to others. The formula battle is really about philosophy, not business. Plankton chose obsession over happiness, and it shows even more when he gets everything he wants and still can't handle it. The algae's always greener proves that owning the Krusty Krab and having the secret formula means nothing if you don't know how to manage people and create a positive work environment. Plankton gets everything he ever wanted and discovers that success is way harder than it looks. The episode starts with another failed attempt by Plankton to steal a Krabby Patty. After Mr. Krabs calls him just a dirty little man, Plankton goes home frustrated and wishes he could switch lives with Mr. Krabs. Karen reminds him he built a machine for exactly that purpose. Plankton uses his switch lives just to know what it's like omographier and wakes up as the owner of the Krusty Krab. He's thrilled to finally have the restaurant, the wealth, and access to unlimited Krabby Patties. At first, everything seems perfect with his corporate office, money vault, and awards, but then the real work begins, and Plankton quickly discovers he has no idea how to manage employees. When SpongeBob asks for his weekly performance review, Plankton randomly tells him he's using too much sauce, which causes SpongeBob to have a complete breakdown. Instead of addressing the problem properly, Plankton just promotes him to co-cashier. This creates more problems. Squidward gets angry about working with SpongeBob and demands to be moved. Plankton makes Squidward the fry cook, which makes everything worse because now Squidward is making disgusting patties with eyeballs and wood in them. Plankton's management style is basically give people what they want to shut them up, which creates chaos. Then Pearl shows up asking for an allowance advance. When Plankton gives her only $1, she cries so hard that her tears flood the office. Meanwhile, SpongeBob has another breakdown because he gave a customer a large drink instead of a medium, screaming, "Soiled it," over and over. The final straw comes when Mr. Krabs shows up as a naked pirate trying to steal Krabby Patties. After he's caught and leaves, he calls Plankton and says, and the next day, repeatedly, promising to come back every single day to steal the formula. This breaks Plankton completely. He realizes that being successful means dealing with difficult employees, crying daughters, and persistent competitors every single day forever. He screams, "It's not worth it," which is back to his old life, where he's actually happy to eat holographic meatloaf. The episode shows that Mr. Krabs' success comes from his ability to manage people and handle stress. Plankton thought the secret was just having the formula and the restaurant, but he learned that the real secret is leadership, patience, and the ability to work with difficult people. Having the recipe doesn't matter if you can't create a functional workplace. Plankton fails when he tries to control people, but he's dangerous when he uses tricks instead of force. The SpongeBob SquarePantis movie features Plankton's most successful scheme ever, Plan Z. This plot shows how Plankton finally learned that stealing the formula directly would never work, so he switched to pure manipulation and mind control to take over all of Bikini Bottom. The movie starts with Plankton watching Mr. Krabs get interviewed about opening the Krusty Krab 2, feeling frustrated that he's never even had one customer. When Karen mentions Plan Z, Plankton discovers it in his filing cabinet and declares, "It's evil, it's diabolical, it's lemon-scented. This Plan Z can't possibly fail." Unlike his usual schemes that involve sneaking into the Krusty Krab or building elaborate machines to steal the formula, Plan Z is completely different. Instead of going after the recipe directly, Plankton decides to frame Mr. Krabs for stealing King Neptune's crown and let Neptune do his dirty work for him. The plan is brilliant in its simplicity. Plankton steals Neptune's crown himself, then plants fake evidence that Mr. Krabs did it. He leaves a note saying, "I stole your crown," signed Eugene Krabs, and even calls the restaurant impersonating someone who bought the crown from Mr. Krabs. When King Neptune arrives furious, Plankton doesn't have to lift a finger. What makes Plan Z so different from Plankton's usual approach is that he completely abandons trying to steal the formula. Instead, he manipulates the situation so that Mr. Krabs gets frozen and the restaurant becomes abandoned. Only then does Plankton casually walk in and take the formula from an empty kitchen. He didn't need to outsmart SpongeBob or break through security, he just waited for everyone to leave. The mind control aspect comes through the bucket helmets. Instead of trying to force people to eat at the chum bucket, Plankton gives away free helmets with every Krabby Patty purchase. These helmets contain brain control devices that turn everyone into slaves who chant, "All hail Plankton." This shows Plankton's evolution from trying to steal recipes to actually controlling people's minds. When Squidward figures out the scheme and tries to report Plankton to King Neptune, Plankton simply activates the helmets and turns the entire town into his personal army. This demonstrates how much more effective manipulation is than his old direct approaches. Plan Z succeeds beyond Plankton's wildest dreams. He gets the formula, takes over the Krusty Krab, enslaves all of Bikini Bottom, and even mind controls King Neptune himself. For most of the movie, Plankton has complete victory. His restaurant is packed, he's making real Krabby Patties, and everyone serves him. The scheme only fails when SpongeBob returns and uses the power of rock music to break the mind control helmets. But even then, Plankton came closer to permanent victory than he ever had before. He controlled an entire city, had the secret formula, and even had the King of the Sea as his slave. Plan Z represents Plankton's growth as a villain. Instead of relying on his scientific knowledge to build complicated machines, he used psychology and manipulation. Instead of trying to overpower his enemies, he turned them against each other. Instead of stealing the formula through force, he created circumstances where it would fall into his lap naturally. The movie shows that Plankton's biggest weakness was always his direct approach. When he tried to sneak in and steal things, SpongeBob could stop him. But when he worked behind the scenes to manipulate events and control minds, he became truly dangerous. Plan Z proves that Plankton's real talent was never science or invention. It was evil cunning and the ability to think several steps ahead. This scheme established Plankton as a serious threat who could actually succeed if he focused on manipulation rather than robbery. It showed that the real battle was over the minds and loyalty of Bikini Bottom citizens. The guy basically took over the world using free hats. That's pretty impressive for someone the size of a crumb. Plan Z shows Plankton is strongest when he uses tricks instead of force, but his best win was working with Krabs, not against him. Now let's head back to Friend or Foe, the episode that reveals how the Krabby Patty formula was accidentally created and shows that the best innovations come from friendship and collaboration, not competition. The episode reveals that Mr. Krabs and Plankton started as partners, not rivals. When they were kids getting bullied at school, they decided to work together to create a better burger than Stinky's restaurant. The crucial thing is that neither of them could have done it alone. Plankton brought the science while Krabs brought the business sense. Their collaboration process shows how real innovation works. They went to their secret hideout in the dump and experimented together, carefully recording their progress. Plankton handled the chemistry while Krabs focused on presentation. When they finally created their first burger, Plankton said, "Gently, gently," as they worked together to perfect it. The episode shows 3 different versions of what happened when their partnership fell apart. But the truth revealed by Karen's security footage is the most important. Their original recipe was actually terrible and accidentally poisoned Old Man Jenkins. When they started arguing about whose fault it was, they tore the recipe in half during their fight. Here's the key moment. The perfect Krabby Patty formula was created by complete accident. When Plankton stormed out angry, he knocked over jars that spilled into the ruined burger mixture. Mr. Krabs tasted it and discovered the perfect recipe. But this accident only happened because of their combined work up to that point. The episode proves that their greatest achievement came from working together, not competing. Plankton's scientific knowledge created the base recipe, and the accidental spill that perfected it happened because they were both there arguing over their shared creation. Neither of them planned the final formula, it emerged from their collaboration. After they split up, both of them failed when they tried to recreate success alone. Plankton's chum burgers were disgusting because he only had half the recipe and none of Krabs' business instincts. Meanwhile, Krabs got lucky with the accidental perfect formula, but he lost the scientific innovation that Plankton brought to their partnership. The episode shows that competition actually made both of them worse. When they worked together, they created something with potential. When they started competing, Plankton became bitter and obsessed while Krabs became greedy and paranoid. Their rivalry brought out the worst in both characters. What's really telling is that throughout the series, neither character has been able to recreate that original spark of innovation. Krabs just protects his existing formula while Plankton keeps trying to steal it instead of creating something new. They're both stuck fighting over something they created together decades ago. The accidental nature of the formula's creation shows that the best innovations often happen when people combine different skills and perspectives, then let unexpected things happen. Plankton's science plus Krabs' ambition plus random chance equaled the perfect recipe. No single person planned it. At the end, both characters briefly realize what they've lost. Krabs admits money doesn't hug back, and Plankton says he was really just trying to steal back our friendship. They understand that their greatest achievement came from collaboration, not competition. The episode demonstrates that innovation thrives on partnership. When people with different strengths work toward a common goal, they can create things neither could achieve alone. But when those same people become competitors instead of collaborators, they lose the magic that made their original success possible. Krabs and Plankton were once friends who built something great, but losing it turned them into enemies. Imitation Krabs shows how Plankton's disguises became more elaborate over time, revealing his evolution from a simple villain into a desperate mastermind willing to try anything to get the formula. This episode demonstrates just how far his obsession has driven him. The episode starts with Plankton using a basic fish robot disguise with just a fake mustache. His plan is simple. Pretend to be a game show host offering SpongeBob $1 million for answering one question about the secret formula. When SpongeBob recites the legal disclaimer instead of the actual recipe, Plankton loses his temper and his disguise literally falls apart. After this failure, Plankton creates his most ambitious disguise yet, a full robot replica of Mr. Krabs. This shows his evolution as a villain. Instead of just putting on a costume, he's now building sophisticated machinery to impersonate his enemy. The robot even has laser eyes, exhaust pipes, and complex control systems operated from inside. The desperation becomes obvious when Plankton tries to use the robot to fool Squidward first. When Squidward immediately sees through it, saying, "You're not Mr. Krabs," Plankton quickly gives up on him and focuses entirely on SpongeBob. This shows that Plankton has learned to target the most gullible person rather than waste time on skeptics. Plankton's growing desperation shows when he has to go through SpongeBob's ridiculous secret handshake routine. The episode shows them doing increasingly absurd activities, standing on one foot while balancing chocolate milk and singing the national anthem, then eating spaghetti through straws, performing circus tricks, and reciting nonsense rhymes. Plankton endures all of this because he's so desperate for the formula. The narrator says 6.5 hours later, showing that Plankton spent an entire day performing these ridiculous tasks. He even ate 105 black licorice jelly beans through a straw just to complete the handshake. So this level of commitment shows how his obsession has consumed him completely. When SpongeBob finally reveals that the formula is written down and stored in a bottle, Plankton gets so excited that he starts sweating and shaking while operating the robot's controls. His desperation is now so intense that he can barely contain himself when success seems within reach. The episode also shows Plankton's tactical evolution. He uses a penny to distract the real Mr. Krabs, knowing that Krab's greed will make him chase it. This demonstrates that Plankton has learned to exploit his enemy's weaknesses, rather than just relying on brute force or simple tricks, but Plankton's desperation also leads to his downfall. When both Mr. Krabs arrive and SpongeBob can't tell which is real, Plankton gets overconfident. He answers SpongeBob's quiz questions correctly, thinking his superior knowledge will prove he's the real Mr. Krabs. But he doesn't realize that SpongeBob's questions are impossible for the real Mr. Krabs to answer. The final irony comes when SpongeBob innocently puts a penny into what he thinks is a shirt slot, but it's actually the robot's coin-operated self-destruct mechanism. Plankton's own elaborate design becomes his undoing. He screams, "Coin-operated self-destruct. Not one of my better ideas," as his robot explodes. This episode shows that Plankton's schemes have become more sophisticated, but also more unstable. His desperation drives him to create increasingly complex plans, but that same desperation makes him sloppy and prone to mistakes. The more elaborate his disguises become, the more ways they can fail. The episode proves that Plankton's evolution as a villain makes him more dangerous, but also more predictable. His desperation always leads him to overreach, and his inability to understand normal social behavior becomes his biggest weakness. He can build amazing robots, but he can't figure out how real relationships work. Plankton's failed disguises show how obsession makes plans collapse, but Squidward's breakdown proves the Krusty Krab itself is just as unstable without proper balance. But make sure to subscribe to the channel. Squid's Day Off proves that the Krusty Krab is held together by a very fragile balance where everyone needs to do their specific job or the whole system falls apart. This episode shows that even leaving SpongeBob alone for a few hours creates chaos in Squidward's mind. The episode starts with Mr. Krabs getting his claw stuck in a sink drain while trying to save a dime. When SpongeBob tries to help by pulling him out, Mr. Krabs' arms get ripped off and he gets knocked unconscious by falling objects. This sets up the crisis. Mr. Krabs has to go to the hospital, leaving the restaurant without its owner and manager. Before the ambulance takes him away, Mr. Krabs makes a crucial decision. He puts Squidward in charge, saying, "I'm putting you in charge of things around here while I'm gone." This seems like a simple handoff, but it immediately shows how delicate the restaurant's management structure really is. Squidward's first move as temporary manager reveals how the restaurant barely functions even under normal circumstances. Instead of properly managing, he gives SpongeBob a promotion, where SpongeBob has to run both the cash register and the grill. Squidward basically abandons his post to go relax at home, leaving SpongeBob to do 3 jobs at once. This shows that Squidward doesn't understand what being a manager actually means. The episode shows that Squidward can't actually handle being in charge. Even though he desperately wants a day off, he becomes paranoid about what might go wrong. He starts imagining disasters. SpongeBob giving away all the money to Patrick, setting the restaurant on fire, or making other catastrophic mistakes. His imagination shows that he knows how easily things can go wrong. What's really funny is that SpongeBob actually handles everything perfectly. When Squidward asks for change, SpongeBob knows exactly how to break down a dollar in multiple ways. Do you want 4 quarters, or 10 dimes, or 20 nickels, or 100 pennies? He's completely competent at both cooking and cashier work. But Squidward can't trust this because he knows how delicate the restaurant's operations really are. Squidward's paranoia gets worse throughout the episode. He keeps running back to check on SpongeBob, making excuse after excuse about errands. He starts hallucinating SpongeBob everywhere. In his mirror reflection, outside his window is a branch, in his bathroom is a toilet, even in his bathtub is a drain monster. His mental breakdown shows how much stress the restaurant operations create for everyone involved. The episode shows that the restaurant depends on a very specific division of labor. Mr. Krabs normally handles money, management, customer relations, and oversight. Squidward handles taking orders, complaining about customers, and providing cynical commentary. SpongeBob handles cooking, enthusiasm, and following company policies. When you remove one person and dump their responsibilities on others, everything becomes unstable. Squidward's breakdown demonstrates that he's not actually management material. A real manager would either stay and supervise properly or train SpongeBob adequately before leaving. Instead, Squidward tries to have it both ways. He wants the authority of being in charge, but none of the actual responsibility that comes with leadership. The episode also shows how the absence of proper supervision affects everyone differently. SpongeBob thrives when given more responsibility and handles multiple jobs competently, but the lack of oversight makes Squidward lose his mind with worry, even though he's the one who created the situation by abandoning his post. The final irony comes when SpongeBob reveals they forgot to flip the closed sign to open. There were never any customers all day, so all of Squidward's paranoia was completely pointless. But this actually proves the episode's point. The restaurant's ecosystem is so delicate that even an empty day creates chaos when proper supervision breaks down. The episode shows that the Krusty Krab only works because everyone knows their role and sticks to it. When that balance gets disrupted, even the most competent employee can't handle multiple roles without someone going crazy. It's a perfect example of how workplace ecosystems need every piece in place to function properly. One story shows the Krusty Krab falling apart without order, while the training video hides that mess by pretending it's all professional. Krusty Krab training video shows the hilarious gap between what the Krusty Krab pretends to be in its official corporate training and what it actually is in real life. This episode reveals that behind all the fancy policies, the restaurant is basically held together by SpongeBob's enthusiasm. The training video presents the Krusty Krab as a modern business with all the latest achievements in fast food technology. But when Mr. Krabs shows off this advanced equipment, it's just basic restaurant stuff with fancy names. A spatula becomes an advanced patty control mechanism, ice cubes are high-quality beverage temperature devices, and ketchup packets are state-of-the-art condiment dispersal units. This shows how the restaurant tries to sound way more sophisticated than it really is. The narrator claims Mr. Krabs spared no expense on technology, but everything is just regular cheap restaurant equipment with corporate buzzwords. The video presents official policies like the poop system if people order our patties. This makes it seem like the Krusty Krab has scientific methods for understanding customers, but then they show Patrick being completely confused and taking forever to decide what he wants. The hygiene section shows the biggest gap between policy and reality. The training demands that employees scrub their hands until they're invisible and cut off facial boils with scissors. SpongeBob follows these rules so literally that he destroys his hands from overwashing. Meanwhile, Squidward is sleeping on the toilet in the bathroom, which definitely isn't part of the official policy. The workspace organization shows SpongeBob keeping everything perfectly filed with not a pickle out of place, but Squidward's station is covered in ketchup and mustard, and he's sleeping with a do not disturb sign. The video just says, "Mr. SquarePants can cover for you," showing the restaurant only functions because one employee actually follows the rules. Customer service training presents the ideal of treating customers like precious blood, but in reality, Squidward tells Patrick to go be stupid somewhere else, and gets frustrated when Patrick takes forever to order. The emergency procedures show how unprepared everyone is. When Plankton tries to steal a Krabby Patty, SpongeBob just runs around screaming and knocking over furniture instead of following any protocol. Mr. Krabs handles the situation while SpongeBob creates chaos. The biggest irony comes when the video builds up to revealing the secret Krabby Patty recipe, but gets cut off right before the actual information. This shows that even the training doesn't teach employees their most important job. This episode perfectly captures how corporate training videos try to make simple jobs sound professional, while the actual workplace is chaotic and depends on employees figuring things out themselves. The training video makes the Krusty Krab look perfect, but really it's just chaos and SpongeBob holding it together, and when Mr. Krabs cares more about money than people, it becomes unsafe. Fear of a Krabby Patty shows what happens when Mr. Krabs puts profit over people and learns the hard way that pushing employees too far can destroy everything. This episode proves that some business expansion ideas sound good on paper, but create disasters in real life. The episode starts when Mr. Krabs sees that the Chum Bucket is advertising now open 23 hours. His competitive instincts kick in immediately, and he declares that the Krusty Krab will be open 24 hours to beat Plankton. This decision seems logical from a business perspective, but Mr. Krabs doesn't think about what this means for his employees. SpongeBob is thrilled about working nonstop, but Squidward immediately realizes this is terrible news. As the days go by, the human cost becomes obvious. By day 10, Squidward is exhausted with bags under my eyes. Even my bags have bags. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is still singing happily, showing that his obsession with work is actually unhealthy. Mr. Krabs keeps pushing the 24-hour schedule for over 40 days. When Squidward collapses from exhaustion, Mr. Krabs just tells him he can sit down for 5 minutes before getting back to work. This shows how little he values employee well-being compared to staying open. The breaking point comes when Plankton orders 10,000 Krabby Patties under the fake name Peter Langton. Mr. Krabs pushes SpongeBob even harder, saying no breaks while demanding impossible productivity. This is when the expansion backfires completely. SpongeBob starts hallucinating that everyone is a Krabby Patty trying to attack him. He becomes terrified of the very food he loves making and starts screaming around the restaurant. This shows that even the most dedicated employee has limits, and pushing past those limits destroys their ability to work. When SpongeBob finally gets some sleep during his fake therapy session, he recovers completely. His problem wasn't permanent mental illness, it was simple exhaustion from being overworked for weeks. This proves that the expansion attempt failed because it ignored basic human needs. At the end, Mr. Krabs seems to learn his lesson, saying, no more 24-hour shifts, but then he immediately says, 23 hours will be plenty, showing that he still doesn't fully understand the problem. He's learned to dial back the expansion slightly, but he's still prioritizing profit over employee welfare. This episode demonstrates that successful business expansion requires considering the human cost, not just the profit potential. Sometimes the best business decision is knowing when not to expand. Mr. Krabs' 24-hour idea shows how greed can ruin things, but the pizza and hot dog experiments prove the Krusty Krab works best when it changes without losing what makes it special. Pizza delivery and Krusty dogs show how the Krusty Krab went from just a burger place to this huge cultural thing that everyone loves. These episodes prove that the restaurant can try new stuff while still keeping what makes it awesome. Pizza delivery is basically the first time the Krusty Krab tried selling something other than burgers. A customer calls asking for pizza after they're closed, and Mr. Krabs just goes, "Of course we have pizza," even though they've never made one. He literally just smashes some Krabby Patties together, puts them in a pizza box, and calls it good. That's peak Mr. Krabs right there. The funny thing is, this actually works pretty well. The pizza is basically just a flat Krabby Patty, so it probably tastes amazing. Mr. Krabs figured out how to sell to pizza customers using the same ingredients he already had. That's actually smart business, even if it's totally ridiculous. Then SpongeBob and Squidward have to deliver this pizza, and they get completely lost in the middle of nowhere. They face tornadoes, almost starve to death, and SpongeBob refuses to let go of the pizza even when he's flying around in a windstorm. He keeps yelling, "It's for the customer," like this pizza delivery is the most important thing in the world. The best part is SpongeBob makes up this whole song about Krusty Krab pizza during their journey. He's like, "The Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me," and keeps singing different versions. He does beatboxing, blues rock, all kinds of stuff. The guy is basically writing free commercials because he loves his job that much. But then they finally deliver the pizza, and the customer complains because he didn't get a drink he never even ordered. He throws the pizza at SpongeBob's face, and SpongeBob just starts crying. It's actually really sad because SpongeBob put his heart into this delivery, and the customer was just being a jerk about it. Squidward gets so mad that he takes the pizza and slams it in the customer's face. Even Squidward, who hates everything, will defend the restaurant when someone treats SpongeBob badly. That shows you how much the Krusty Krab means to everyone who works there. Krusty Dogs happens way later and shows how the restaurant keeps adapting. SpongeBob accidentally makes a hot dog shape out of leftover Krabby Patty meat, and this customer goes crazy for it. He's willing to pay double the price just because it looks different, even though it tastes exactly the same. Mr. Krabs sees dollar signs and immediately starts selling Krusty dogs for way more money than regular burgers. Within like one day, he changes the whole menu, renames the restaurant the Krusty Dogs, throws out the grill, and gives SpongeBob hot dog tongs instead of his spatula. The guy moves fast when there's profit involved, but SpongeBob has a complete meltdown about this. When Mr. Krabs crosses Krabby Patties off the menu, SpongeBob literally faints and they have to call paramedics. That's how much the Krabby Patty means to him. It's not just his job, it's like his whole identity. So SpongeBob decides to sabotage the hot dogs by putting balloons in them. When customers bite into them, they explode and cover everyone in meat. All the customers run away screaming, and Mr. Krabs has to bring back the Krabby Patties. Even Squidward helps with this plan, which shows that both employees care more about the restaurant's soul than making money. The thing is, both episodes show that the Krusty Krab can sell whatever customers want, but it always has to come back to Krabby Patties. That's what makes the place special. Customers might get excited about pizza or hot dogs for a while, but they really want that classic Krabby Patty experience. What's cool is how the restaurant became this cultural institution that means something to people. SpongeBob writes songs about it, goes on epic adventures for it, and will literally sabotage his own workplace to protect its identity. That's way beyond just having a job. The Krusty Krab represents something bigger about quality, tradition, and caring about what you do. These episodes prove that the restaurant works because it can try new things while keeping its heart intact. It can adapt to whatever the market wants, but it never forgets what made it successful in the first place. The Krusty Krab is special because it balances being innovative with staying true to itself. That's probably why it's lasted so long, and why everyone in Bikini Bottom loves it so much. Now that we've talked about how the Krusty Krab grew as a business, let's dive into the relationships between the people who work there. Because honestly, the restaurant is only as good as the team running it, and these employees have some pretty wild dynamics. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Now let's talk about Employee of the Month episode again. This episode shows that workplace competition can bring out the absolute worst in people, even turning SpongeBob into a total psychopath when his precious award is threatened. The episode starts with SpongeBob being excited about Employee of the Month judging day. He's won 26 months straight, and there's a whole wall covered with his pictures, but when Mr. Krabs hints that Squidward might actually have a chance this time, SpongeBob completely loses it. What's really messed up is how SpongeBob reacts to the possibility of losing. He has a full mental breakdown. He starts talking to his Employee of the Month pictures like they're alive, and they literally tell him, "This is war now, private." That's someone whose entire self-worth depends on a stupid workplace award. The competition turns both of them into criminals. SpongeBob breaks into Squidward's house at night and destroys all his alarm clocks. Think about that for a second. He committed burglary just to win an employee award. Squidward fights back by digging a giant hole in front of SpongeBob's door and boarding up his house. These guys are basically trying to kidnap each other. They both stay awake all night watching each other through their windows. That's stalker behavior. They're so obsessed with beating each other that they're willing to destroy their health and commit crimes. All for a piece of paper that says good job. When they finally get to work, they go completely insane trying to impress Mr. Krabs. They're putting their own money in the register, working twice as fast as normal, and basically destroying the restaurant with their productivity. They make so many Krabby Patties that the whole building explodes. The episode shows that workplace recognition can become a drug. SpongeBob is addicted to being praised. When that addiction gets threatened, he turns into a dangerous person who will hurt others to protect his supply. What's really sad is that their competition destroys everything it was supposed to protect. They're fighting over who loves the Krusty Krab more, but their fighting literally blows up the restaurant. All those free Krabby Patties flying around town represent lost money for Mr. Krabs. The episode also reveals how toxic SpongeBob can be when he feels threatened. Usually he's nice and innocent, but when his award is at risk, he becomes manipulative and ruthless. He's willing to sabotage his coworker and break the law to maintain his perfect record. The episode ends with both of them still fighting over who won while Mr. Krabs is screaming about all the damage they caused. Nobody actually gets the award because they destroyed the workplace trying to earn it. Their competition defeated its own purpose. Graveyard Shift proves that sometimes the best way to bond with your coworkers is to be absolutely terrified together. This episode shows that when SpongeBob and Squidward face their worst fears side by side, they actually become real friends for the first time. The whole thing starts because Mr. Krabs gets greedy and decides to keep the Krusty Krab open 24 hours after seeing potential customers with money. Squidward is furious about working nights, but SpongeBob is thrilled about never having to stop working. SpongeBob spends the early night being annoyingly cheerful about everything, telling Squidward he's chopping lettuce at night and swabbing the bathroom at night. Squidward gets so fed up that he tells the fake story of the hash-slinging slasher, a former fry cook who cut off his hand, replaced it with a rusty spatula, got hit by a bus, and now returns every Tuesday night for revenge. The story works perfectly. SpongeBob gets absolutely terrified, screaming for like 20 seconds straight. Squidward laughs because he thinks he's won. But then something unexpected happens later that night. All three signs from Squidward's fake story start coming true. The lights flicker, the phone rings with nobody there, and a mysterious bus drops off a shadowy figure with a spatula. Suddenly, Squidward realizes that maybe his made-up story wasn't so made up. When they see the dark figure approaching, both characters completely panic and grab onto each other for comfort. The fear makes them incredibly vulnerable and honest. Squidward admits, "No matter what I've said, I've always sort of liked you," while SpongeBob confesses he used Squidward's clarinet to unclog his toilet. When the hash-slinging slasher turns out to be just a nervous guy looking for a job, they realize how silly they were. But something important happened during those terrifying moments. They saw each other as real people instead of just annoying co-workers, proving that shared fear can create genuine friendship. Born Again Krabs shows what happens when Mr. Krabs literally almost dies from his own greed and gets a second chance to be a better person. This episode proves that, deep down, Mr. Krabs actually has a conscience, but his love of money is stronger than his morals. The whole disaster starts when Mr. Krabs finds an old, moldy Krabby Patty that SpongeBob threw away. Instead of letting it go, Mr. Krabs refuses to waste the 5.2 cents and forces SpongeBob to serve it to customers. The patty is so rotten that it's literally growling like a wild animal and has to be kept in a cage. After weeks of trying to sell this disgusting burger, Mr. Krabs finally eats it himself to prove it's fine. He gets severe food poisoning and ends up in the hospital, where the Flying Dutchman shows up to drag him to Davy Jones's locker because being cheap is a terrible thing. Mr. Krabs begs for another chance and returns to the Krusty Krab as the most generous boss ever. He gives away free toys, free refills, and lets Squidward take long naps. But when the credit card bills arrive and he realizes he's broke, he instantly reverts back to his greedy self. The Flying Dutchman catches him being cheap again and offers Mr. Krabs a choice between SpongeBob and 62 cents. Mr. Krabs chooses the money, but after SpongeBob is taken away, he breaks down crying and throws the money on the ground. For the first time, Mr. Krabs chooses a person over profit, showing that underneath all that greed, he actually does have a heart. Now that we've talked about how people work together at the Krusty Krab, let's look at the most important friendship in the whole show, SpongeBob and Patrick. Their friendship is really what the series is all about. Before I tell you about that, subscribe to the channel. Naughty Nautical Neighbors shows how strong SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship really is by putting it through the ultimate test, a jealous neighbor who wants to destroy it. This episode proves that their bond can survive almost anything. But it also reveals how vulnerable they are to manipulation when someone knows exactly what buttons to push. The whole mess starts when Squidward is trying to enjoy a fancy dinner with his homemade souffle. He's dressed in a tuxedo, feeling sophisticated, when SpongeBob and Patrick start playing their bubble message game right outside his window. They're sending sweet messages to each other through bubbles, telling each other they're best friends, and just having innocent fun. Squidward gets so annoyed by their happiness that he decides to ruin it. He makes his own bubble mixture from his destroyed souffle and starts sending fake messages between them. He mimics SpongeBob's voice to tell Patrick, "You are the dumbest idiot it has ever been my misfortune to know," and mimics Patrick to say horrible things back to SpongeBob. The manipulation works perfectly because both SpongeBob and Patrick completely trust each other. When they hear these mean messages, they don't question whether their best friend actually said them. They just get hurt and angry, calling each other names and declaring they never want to see each other again. Their friendship falls apart in minutes because of Squidward's lies. But then something unexpected happens. Squidward starts choking on his fork while laughing at their fight, and Patrick immediately runs over to save him with CPR. Even though Patrick was just screaming at SpongeBob, he doesn't hesitate to help someone in danger. This shows that Patrick is naturally kind, even when he's upset. Squidward becomes grateful and calls Patrick his friend, which creates a new problem. Now both SpongeBob and Patrick are competing for Squidward's friendship instead of being friends with each other. The competition gets ridiculous. SpongeBob tries to impress Squidward by playing music badly and smashing his cello. Patrick invades Squidward's bathroom and acts like they're best buddies. Squidward realizes he's created a monster and needs to fix this situation. He tricks them into coming to a dinner party at his house, hoping they'll make up. But instead, they just compete over who gets more soda and who is Squidward's real best friend. When Squidward leaves them alone to get more soda, something beautiful happens. SpongeBob hiccups and makes a bubble that pops with a funny sound. Both of them laugh at the same time, and suddenly they remember why they're friends. They start making bubbles together and having fun again, completely forgetting about their fight. By the time Squidward comes back, his house is destroyed, but SpongeBob and Patrick are friends again. They're holding each other and acting like nothing happened. When Squidward kicks them out, they even bond over thinking he's pathetic for being jealous of their friendship. This episode shows that SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship is incredibly strong, but also surprisingly fragile. They love each other so much that they completely trust whatever the other person says, which makes them easy targets for manipulation. But their bond is also so natural that the moment they stop being angry, they immediately go back to having fun together. SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship survives Squidward's lies and jealousy, but the secret box shows their bond can be shaken just as badly by curiosity and broken trust. The secret box puts SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship through one of its toughest tests by forcing SpongeBob to choose between his burning curiosity and respecting his best friend's privacy. This episode shows that even the strongest friendships have boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. The whole thing starts when Patrick shows up with a mysterious box that he calls his secret box. He teases SpongeBob by saying, "If only you could see what's inside my secret box, it would change your life," but refuses to show him what's in it. SpongeBob tries to be understanding at first. He shares tons of his own secrets with Patrick, telling him everything from, "I sleep with my shoes on," to, "I'm wearing 3 pairs of underwear right now." SpongeBob basically strips his soul bare, hoping Patrick will return the favor and show him the box. But Patrick doesn't budge. He keeps saying the box contains the most secrety secret of all of Secret Dom, and threatens that if SpongeBob tries to look again, they won't be friends anymore. This creates a huge conflict for SpongeBob between respecting Patrick and his overwhelming curiosity. SpongeBob can't sleep that night, imagining what could be in the box. He thinks it might be stolen diamonds, severed heads, or worst of all, an embarrassing photo of himself. His curiosity becomes so intense that he decides to sneak into Patrick's house and look in the box while Patrick is sleeping. SpongeBob's midnight break-in shows how far his curiosity has pushed him. He puts on gloves and a ski mask like a real burglar. Every step he takes makes ridiculous loud noises like car crashes and machine guns. But somehow Patrick stays asleep through all of it. When Patrick finally catches SpongeBob with the box, he's devastated and says their friendship is over. SpongeBob realizes he's crossed a line and cries, "I have soiled our friendship garden!" But then Patrick surprises everyone by letting SpongeBob look inside. When SpongeBob opens it, he finds just a simple piece of string. Patrick calls it a secret string, and SpongeBob goes home satisfied. But the episode's ending reveals the truth. The string was connected to a secret compartment containing an embarrassing photo of SpongeBob from a Christmas party. This episode shows that sometimes friends keep secrets to protect each other, not hurt them. Patrick wasn't being mean, he was being kind by not embarrassing SpongeBob. The episode proves that respecting boundaries is more important than satisfying curiosity, even between best friends. SpongeBob breaking into Patrick's house shows how curiosity can strain their bond. But Patrick mocking SpongeBob to impress strangers proves betrayal cuts even deeper. I'm with Stupid reveals the ugly truth about Patrick's friendship with SpongeBob. When given the chance to look good in front of others, Patrick will throw his best friend under the bus without hesitation. This episode shows that their friendship isn't as balanced as it seems. The whole thing starts when Patrick gets a letter saying his parents are coming to visit for Starfish Day. Patrick is stressed because his parents think he's dumber than a sack of diapers and treat him like a complete idiot. They congratulate him for basic things like putting drinks in cups and say "Pats for Patrick" like he's a toddler. SpongeBob offers to help by pretending to be really dumb so Patrick will look smart by comparison. SpongeBob acts stupid as planned, walking into his house and getting stuck, balancing on his nose and making animal noises. Patrick's parents laugh and think Patrick is amazing, but Patrick starts enjoying the power of being the smart one way too much. He begins making fun of SpongeBob for real, saying things like, "Only somebody with holes drilled in their head would wear that stuff," and joking about SpongeBob's shape and clothes. Patrick even wears a shirt that says, "I'm with the dummy," with an arrow pointing at SpongeBob. When SpongeBob tries to talk to Patrick privately, Patrick won't stop the act. He tells SpongeBob dumb people are always blissfully unaware of how dumb they really are, and has completely forgotten this was supposed to be fake. SpongeBob finally takes off his helmet and tries to explain the truth to the parents, saying he was just pretending to be stupid, but Patrick won't let him break character. He tells his parents that he taught SpongeBob how to talk in just 3 minutes, taking credit for SpongeBob's intelligence. When SpongeBob tries to prove he's smart by doing math and showing them a picture of his brain, Patrick responds with, "That must be actual size," and everyone laughs. Patrick has completely abandoned their friendship for approval from people who aren't even his real parents. The episode ends with the twist that Janet and Marty aren't actually Patrick's real parents, they're just random people who got lost. Patrick's actual parents show up and treat him exactly the same way, proving that all his cruelty towards SpongeBob was for nothing. This episode shows that Patrick's friendship with SpongeBob has a serious imbalance. SpongeBob was willing to embarrass himself just to help Patrick feel better, but the moment Patrick got a chance to feel superior, he turned on SpongeBob completely, revealing how his low self-esteem can make him cruel to his best friend. Patrick's fake parents show how mean he can be, but the Valentine's Day mess and a little paper gift prove SpongeBob still finds joy in their friendship. Valentine's Day and the paper perfectly capture what makes SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship so special. They can find incredible joy in the simplest things, and their bond is strong enough to survive even the biggest misunderstandings. These episodes show that true friendship is about sharing happiness with someone who gets you. Valentine's Day starts with SpongeBob planning the most elaborate Valentine's gift ever for Patrick, a giant chocolate hot air balloon. SpongeBob and Sandy work together on this massive project, with Sandy flying the balloon while SpongeBob positions Patrick at the perfect spot to see it. The plan is incredibly detailed and shows how much SpongeBob cares about making Patrick happy, but everything goes wrong when chocolate-eating scallops attack the balloon and Sandy can't make it to the meeting spot on time. SpongeBob is stuck on top of a Ferris wheel with Patrick, who's expecting the greatest Valentine's present in the whole world, and all SpongeBob has to offer is a handshake. When Patrick asks what his gift is, SpongeBob desperately says, "A friendly handshake," and tries to act like that was the plan all along. At first, Patrick seems okay with it. He tries to convince himself that it's the thought that counts, and even though I was expecting more, but then other people start thanking SpongeBob for amazing gifts like chocolates, roses, and even a bike. Patrick realizes that SpongeBob gave everyone else incredible presents while he only got a handshake, and he completely loses it. Patrick goes on a rampage through the carnival, destroying heart decorations and screaming, "Patrick needs love too." He becomes so angry that he threatens to hurt SpongeBob and all the other carnival guests. The situation gets really scary, with Patrick acting like a monster who wants revenge for being treated badly, but then Sandy arrives with the chocolate balloon just in time. When Patrick finally sees his real gift, he's so excited that he immediately bites into the balloon, causing chocolate to explode everywhere. The episode ends with Patrick covered in chocolate saying, "You didn't have to get me anything," showing that he never actually needed an expensive gift. He just needed to know that SpongeBob cared about him as much as everyone else. The paper shows the flip side of their friendship, how SpongeBob can find unlimited entertainment in literally nothing. When Squidward throws away a piece of gum wrapper, SpongeBob asks if he can have it. Squidward thinks it's ridiculous and tells SpongeBob he can keep the garbage forever. But SpongeBob turns that tiny piece of paper into everything imaginable. He uses it as a superhero cape, a loincloth for his Jungle Man character, a parachute, a bullfighter's cape, fake mustaches and eye patches, and even creates oral gamey by folding it in his mouth. Kids gather around to watch his paper tricks, and he makes the paper talk like a ventriloquist dummy. Squidward starts getting jealous watching SpongeBob have so much fun with something so simple. He tries to compete by showing off his own toys and activities, but everything he does seems boring compared to SpongeBob's creativity. When SpongeBob uses the paper as a musical instrument and plays beautiful music, Squidward completely loses it and demands the paper back. The genius part is that SpongeBob won't give it back because Squidward made him promise, "No matter how much I may beg and plead and cry, don't give that paper back to me ever." SpongeBob even made a flip book out of the paper showing Squidward saying those exact words. SpongeBob keeps his promise even when Squidward offers him everything he owns. Finally, Squidward trades his shirt for the paper, but when he tries to recreate SpongeBob's tricks, they all fall flat. The paper doesn't seem magical anymore. Patrick shows up, takes the paper to use as gum wrapper, and throws it in the trash, where it belonged in the first place. These episodes show that SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship works because they both understand how to find joy in simple things. In Valentine's Day, Patrick's anger wasn't really about not getting an expensive gift. It was about feeling left out and unimportant. Once he realized SpongeBob did care about him, the actual gift didn't matter. In the paper, SpongeBob's imagination and enthusiasm turned trash into treasure, but only because he approached it with pure joy instead of jealousy. Both episodes prove that their friendship survives because they share the same childlike wonder about the world. They don't need expensive entertainment or perfect plans. They just need each other and the ability to turn ordinary moments into adventures. That's what makes their bond so strong and why it can survive misunderstandings, tantrums, and even major conflicts. Now that we've talked about SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship, let's look at his relationship with Squidward. These two neighbors have one of the most complicated relationships in the whole show. Opposite Day shows SpongeBob's pure heart and his genuine desire to make Squidward happy, even when he doesn't understand what's really going on. This episode proves that SpongeBob will go to incredible lengths to be a good neighbor, and it forces Squidward to realize that maybe having SpongeBob around isn't always the worst thing in the world. The whole mess starts when SpongeBob and Patrick throw Squidward a surprise birthday party that isn't actually on his birthday. They wake him up with cake, games, and presents, but Squidward is furious because it's not his birthday at all. He gets so fed up that he decides to move out of the neighborhood entirely and calls a real estate agent to sell his house. But then Squidward panics when the agent tells him that bad neighbors can ruin a house sale. He realizes that SpongeBob's annoying behavior will drive away any potential buyers, so he comes up with a plan to trick SpongeBob into being quiet and well-behaved for one day. Squidward tells SpongeBob that it's Opposite Day, a special holiday where everyone has to act the opposite of how they normally behave. He says that since SpongeBob is usually loud and annoying, he should be quiet and stay out of the way. SpongeBob immediately gets excited about this new holiday and promises to be the opposite of himself. SpongeBob takes the Opposite Day concept and runs with it. He starts walking instead of running, speaks quietly, and even tries to stay in bed all day. When Patrick comes over, SpongeBob tells him to go away and calls him his worst enemy, which makes Patrick cry until SpongeBob explains the game. Then both of them start doing everything backwards, including eating from Gary's bowl and speaking in reverse. But SpongeBob's interpretation of Opposite Day gets completely out of control. He and Patrick decide that being opposite means they should destroy SpongeBob's house to clean it. They tear apart his pineapple until it's just a skeleton, thinking this is what Squidward would want them to do. When Squidward sees the destruction, he freaks out and grabs a bulldozer to rebuild SpongeBob's house before the real estate agent arrives. This confuses SpongeBob even more, and he decides that if Squidward is acting like SpongeBob by fixing things, then SpongeBob should act like Squidward. SpongeBob and Patrick both disguise themselves as Squidward and start acting like him. They go into Squidward's house just as the real estate agent arrives. She meets SpongeBob thinking he's Squidward, and SpongeBob tells her all the worst things about the house. The floor creaks, the roof leaks, there's a terrible draft, there's a wild man eating clam in the backyard. The situation gets even worse when Patrick bursts through one of Squidward's paintings and the agent realizes there are now 3 people all claiming to be Squidward. The agent gets so confused and angry that she refuses to sell the house and storms out. Squidward's plan completely backfires, but here's the beautiful part. SpongeBob was genuinely trying to help the whole time. He thought he was playing a fun game that would make Squidward happy. This episode shows that SpongeBob's annoying behavior often comes from a place of love and wanting to make others happy. SpongeBob's annoying kindness shows real love, and that love can make even Squidward act truly selfless. Christmas Who is probably the best episode for showing that underneath all his grumpiness, Squidward actually has a heart. This episode proves that SpongeBob's relentless optimism and kindness can break through even the most cynical exterior, and that Squidward is capable of genuine selflessness when it really matters. The whole thing starts when Sandy introduces SpongeBob to Christmas, telling him about Santa Claus, gift-giving, and holiday traditions. SpongeBob gets so excited that he decides to bring Christmas to all of Bikini Bottom. He tells everyone about Santa and gets them to write letters asking for presents, then shoots the letters to the surface in bottles. Squidward thinks the whole thing is ridiculous from the beginning. He calls SpongeBob's Christmas stories inane dribble and refuses to write a letter to Santa because he thinks it's all made up. While everyone else gets caught up in the Christmas excitement, decorating and singing carols, Squidward stays inside complaining about the noise and calling them all idiots. But when Christmas Eve comes and Santa doesn't show up, everything falls apart. The townspeople get angry at SpongeBob for getting their hopes up with lies and storm off, calling him Mr. Fairy Tale. Patrick abandons him too, saying, "Never trust a genie." SpongeBob is left alone, heartbroken and humiliated. The next morning, Squidward comes out ready to mock SpongeBob and take a great Christmas photo of his misery. He even sings a sarcastic version of the Christmas song while laughing at SpongeBob's sadness. But then something unexpected happens. SpongeBob, even though he's completely defeated and crying, still gives Squidward a handmade present. He says, "I made it for you so you wouldn't be left out when Santa came," and walks away still crying. This moment completely changes everything for Squidward. When Squidward opens the gift, he finds a beautiful clarinet made from driftwood with his name carved on it. When he pushes a button, 3 little wooden Squidwards pop out and play along with him. It's clearly made with incredible care and love. Squidward realizes, this is the greatest gift I've ever gotten, and immediately feels terrible about how he treated SpongeBob. That's when Squidward's heart truly grows. He watches SpongeBob sadly taking down all the Christmas decorations and says, "The poor little guy, all he wanted was to spread a little joy." For the first time, Squidward sees SpongeBob's pure intentions instead of just finding him annoying. Squidward then does something completely out of character. He dresses up as Santa Claus to make SpongeBob happy. He puts on a fake beard, a red suit, and climbs on his roof to surprise SpongeBob. When SpongeBob sees Santa, he's so excited, he can barely speak and eventually faints from joy. But then the whole town shows up expecting presents from Santa, and Squidward has to give away literally everything he owns. He hands out his mashed potatoes, forks, clocks, and eventually empties his entire house just to keep up the charade and make everyone happy. The beautiful part is that Squidward doesn't regret it. Even when he's standing in his empty house wondering if he's insane, he's done something genuinely selfless. He gave up all his possessions just to preserve SpongeBob's Christmas spirit and make the townspeople happy. This episode shows that SpongeBob's influence on Squidward is deeper than anyone realizes. SpongeBob's pure kindness, even in his moment of greatest disappointment, awakened something in Squidward that he probably didn't know existed. Squidward's heart can open when SpongeBob shows kindness, but when he finally takes charge, he proves he can inspire and control everyone around him. Band Geeks is the episode that finally shows Squidward as a real leader instead of just a complainer. This episode proves that when Squidward actually tries to accomplish something meaningful, the entire community will come together to support him, even if they're terrible at what they're doing. The whole thing starts when Squidward gets a phone call from his old rival Squilliam Fancyson, who brags about leading a fancy band that's supposed to play at the Bubble Bowl. When Squilliam says he can't make it and asks if Squidward's band can cover for them, Squidward panics because he doesn't have a band. But his pride kicks in and he lies, saying, "It just so happens that I don't sell fast food, I do have a band, and we're gonna play that Bubble Bowl." After hanging up, Squidward realizes he's in deep trouble and needs to put together a marching band fast. He creates flyers promising fulfillment, fame, and free refreshments to get people to join. The response is actually pretty good. SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, Plankton, Mr. Krabs, Mrs. Puff, and a bunch of other townspeople show up. The problem becomes obvious immediately when Squidward asks who has musical experience. Patrick asks if mayonnaise is an instrument. Plankton asks if instruments of torture count, and nobody knows how to play anything. But Squidward doesn't give up. He takes charge and starts trying to teach them from scratch. For the first few days, everything goes horribly wrong. The flag twirlers spin so hard they take off into the sky and crash into a blimp, killing all 3 of them. Plankton tries to play harmonica by running between the holes, but passes out from exhaustion. When they try to play loud, they break all the windows. The breaking point comes when the band members start fighting with each other. Harold insults Mr. Krabs' claws, and suddenly everyone is using their instruments as weapons. Sandy breaks xylophone keys, Patrick kicks people. Chaos erupts. Squidward tries desperately to maintain order, but it's hopeless. When everyone leaves after the fight, Squidward breaks down completely. He tells them, "You took my one chance in happiness and crushed it into little, tiny, bite-sized pieces." He's genuinely heartbroken because this was important to him, but then something beautiful happens. SpongeBob rallies the group by making them realize they let Squidward down when he needed them. He gives this ridiculous speech about pretending Squidward is a fireman, and somehow it works. The community decides they want to make Squidward proud, and they practice all night without him. The next day at the Bubble Bowl, Squidward is terrified because he thinks his band is still terrible. Squilliam shows up to watch him fail, and Squidward is ready to be humiliated. But when the band starts playing, something magical happens. They perform an incredible rock version of Sweet Victory that blows everyone away. SpongeBob sings lead vocals, Patrick plays drums with sunglasses on, Sandy rocks the electric guitar, and even Mrs. Puff is jamming on bass. The performance is so amazing that Squilliam has a heart attack and gets carried away on a stretcher. Squidward finally gets his moment of triumph. This episode shows that Squidward actually has real leadership potential when he's working towards something he cares about. When the community saw how much it meant to him, they stepped up and delivered an incredible performance, proving that Bikini Bottom's residents will support each other when it really matters. Squidward shines when people rally behind him, but the moment he gets real power, he turns ruthless and demanding. Krusty Towers is the perfect episode for seeing what happens when Squidward gets a taste of power, and SpongeBob has to serve him instead of the other way around. This role reversal reveals some uncomfortable truths about both characters and shows, that power can corrupt even the most downtrodden employee. The whole thing starts when Mr. Krabs converts the Krusty Krab into a fancy hotel called Krusty Towers. He got the idea after staying at an expensive hotel that lived by the motto, "We shall never deny a guest, even the most ridiculous request." Mr. Krabs figures if they can charge $25 for a hamburger, imagine what he could charge for a Krabby Patty with hotel service. The setup immediately puts Squidward and SpongeBob in new roles. Squidward becomes the front desk clerk while SpongeBob handles room service. At first, everything seems normal when Patrick shows up wanting a room. But the real problems start when Mr. Krabs forces Squidward to do all the manual labor, while SpongeBob gets the tips and praise from guests. Squidward has to carry Patrick's heavy bags up the employee stairs while Patrick rides the guest elevator. When Patrick tips SpongeBob with $1 but gives Squidward just a rock, you can see Squidward's frustration building. The breaking point comes when Patrick makes increasingly ridiculous demands, asking Squidward to give him a bubble bath and treating him like a personal servant. Squidward finally snaps and quits, throwing his uniform at Mr. Krabs and storming out. But then he does something brilliant. He comes back as a guest. This is where the power dynamic completely flips. Squidward puts on vacation clothes, pays for a room, and suddenly becomes the customer that Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob have to serve. Squidward immediately starts abusing his new power in ways that are both petty and brilliant. He makes SpongeBob carry his luggage and demands that Mr. Krabs personally carry him to his room. When Mr. Krabs protests, Squidward just points to the hotel motto, and Mr. Krabs has to comply. The revenge gets more elaborate as Squidward orders increasingly disgusting room service. He asks for a Krabby Patty with cheese, toenail clippings, and nose hair, then forces Mr. Krabs to eat it. He demands cookies, just like Mother used to make, then forces Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob to literally kidnap his mother to bake new ones. The most outrageous demand comes when Squidward wants to go swimming but refuses to use the outdoor pool. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob actually install a full swimming pool inside his hotel room, showing just how far they'll go to follow their ridiculous motto. What makes this episode so revealing is how quickly both characters embrace their new roles. SpongeBob remains cheerfully obedient as always, but now he's serving Squidward instead of just Mr. Krabs. Meanwhile, Squidward becomes absolutely ruthless the moment he has power over his former boss and co-worker. The episode shows that Squidward's usual complaints about his job are about being powerless. The moment he gets authority, he becomes just as unreasonable as any difficult customer. It also reveals that SpongeBob's eager-to-please attitude doesn't change based on who he's serving. The whole thing comes crashing down when Patrick cannonballs into the indoor pool, collapsing the entire hotel. This episode proves that power corrupts, even when it's given to someone who's usually powerless. Squidward becomes absolutely merciless when he finally gets the chance to be on top, showing he's capable of being just as unreasonable as anyone else when the tables are turned. Now that we've looked at SpongeBob and Squidward's relationship, let's talk about Mr. Krabs. This greedy crab has his own interesting story that goes way beyond just loving money. Just a reminder to subscribe to our channel. Squeaky Boots reveals that underneath all his greed and penny pinching, Mr. Krabs actually has a conscience that can drive him completely insane when he hurts someone he truly cares about. This episode shows that Mr. Krabs' guilt is so powerful it can literally make him lose his mind and confess his crimes. The whole mess starts when Mr. Krabs tries to save money on his daughter Pearl's birthday present. Instead of buying her the trendy flipper slippers all her friends are wearing, he gets her big black fishing boots because they were a bargain. Pearl is absolutely humiliated and starts crying, telling her dad, "You ruined me!" Stuck with the unwanted boots, Mr. Krabs sees an opportunity when SpongeBob comes asking for his paycheck. Mr. Krabs lies and tells SpongeBob these are special official fry cook boots that only the finest cooks are allowed to wear. He claims they were given to him by the most famous fry cook in the sea, making up this whole story to trick SpongeBob. SpongeBob gets so excited that he offers to give up his paycheck, paint the Krusty Krab for free, and provide a year's worth of French fry orders just to get the boots. Mr. Krabs happily takes the deal, thinking he solved his problem while making money. But the boots squeak with every step SpongeBob takes, and he wears them constantly because he's so proud to be an official fry cook. The squeaking drives Squidward crazy until he quits. Even worse, the sound starts haunting Mr. Krabs day and night because it represents his guilty conscience. The guilt begins eating away at Mr. Krabs immediately. He can't sleep because he keeps hearing squeaking sounds everywhere. At work, every squeak makes Mr. Krabs more nervous and guilty. Unable to take it anymore, he sneaks into SpongeBob's house and steals the boots back. But when SpongeBob comes to work crying about losing the valuable boots, Mr. Krabs' guilt becomes unbearable. He starts hallucinating that everything is squeaking. Customers ordering food sound like they're making squeaking noises. The menu only shows the word squeak instead of food items. Finally, Mr. Krabs completely snaps and confesses everything in front of all the customers. He screams, "Yes, I did it! I took the boots." He lifts up the entire Krusty Krab building to get the boots, then runs into the kitchen and literally eats them to make the squeaking stop forever. When SpongeBob asks why he ate the boots, Mr. Krabs finally tells him the truth. He says, "You're a great fry cook," and gives SpongeBob his paycheck plus a bonus, showing that his conscience has forced him to do the right thing. This episode proves that when Mr. Krabs genuinely hurts someone he cares about through deception, his conscience becomes so powerful it can drive him to madness. Mr. Krabs can go crazy from guilt, but his fear of getting old makes him act even sillier. Midlife crustacean hits Mr. Krabs where it hurts most, his pride. This episode shows how terrified he is of becoming irrelevant and outdated, and how desperately he wants to prove he's still with it when it comes to what young people think is cool. The whole crisis starts when Mr. Krabs wakes up to a radio playing a song about being old with lyrics like, "You're old, groaning like a geezer." As he gets out of bed, his joints crack and he sees himself aging in the mirror. When Pearl gives him his morning pill and calls him old, he starts panicking about whether he's still cool. Pearl makes it worse by telling him that nobody says cool anymore, they say coral, but when Mr. Krabs tries to use the new slang, Pearl immediately tells him it sounds uncoral. This perfectly shows how impossible it is for older people to keep up with constantly changing youth culture. The day gets worse as Mr. Krabs faces one humiliation after another. A Boy Scout tries to help him cross the street like he's helpless. Kids won't let him join their ball game, saying, "Why do old people always have to ruin the fun?" He even, accidentally, joins a line of elderly people, making him scream, "I ain't old!" At the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs overhears SpongeBob and Patrick planning a big night out and sees his chance to prove he's still young and fun. He practically begs to join them, calling himself a crazy dude. When Patrick tests him with a secret handshake and Mr. Krabs just says, "How do you do?" it's painfully obvious how out of touch he is. The night out becomes a series of disappointments. They go to a laundromat and stare at washing machines, pick up trash under the highway, sit in a kiddie pool, and ride children's playground equipment. Each time SpongeBob asks, "Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?" And Mr. Krabs clearly isn't. Finally, he snaps and tells SpongeBob and Patrick they're lame. But then Patrick mentions a panty raid, and suddenly Mr. Krabs perks up. This sounds like the kind of wild, rebellious activity he remembers from his younger days. The twist comes when they sneak into a house and Mr. Krabs realizes they've broken into his own mother's house. When his mom catches him holding her bloomers, he gets grounded like a little kid and sent to his childhood bedroom. This episode brilliantly shows how the fear of aging can make people do ridiculous things to stay relevant. Mr. Krabs was so desperate to prove he wasn't old that he ended up acting more childish than SpongeBob and Patrick. Mr. Krabs acts ridiculous trying to prove he's still cool, and his overprotectiveness at Pearl's party shows fear can ruin things too. The slumber party shows Mr. Krabs at his most overprotective, revealing how his fear of losing control can turn his love for Pearl into suffocating surveillance. This episode proves that even well-meaning protective instincts can backfire spectacularly when taken too far. The whole mess starts when Pearl wants to have a simple slumber party with her friends. Mr. Krabs immediately goes into overprotective dad mode, trying to control every aspect of the event. He chains up the refrigerator, offers only crackers and tap water as refreshments, and tries to give Pearl ketchup packets as pizza money. The situation escalates when Mr. Krabs posts a massive list of rules outside the house, including no dancing, no loud music after 7:30, and most importantly, no boys allowed, with a giant neon sign. His paranoia reaches ridiculous levels as he tries to micromanage a teenage slumber party like it's a military operation. Pearl finally has enough and locks him out of his own house. Instead of trusting his daughter, Mr. Krabs becomes convinced that she and her friends are going to destroy his home after watching a horror movie about teenagers wrecking houses during parties. Unable to contain his fear, Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob to spy on the party, willing to violate Pearl's privacy and trust. The irony is that Pearl and her friends are actually having a perfectly innocent slumber party, just reading magazines and playing board games. The situation explodes when SpongeBob finally gets into the party but tries too hard to prove he's fun. He falls into Mr. Krabs' root beer cellar, absorbs all the root beer, and becomes a monster that actually destroys the house. The very thing Mr. Krabs was trying to prevent happens because of his own interference. When Mr. Krabs blames Pearl for the destruction, she correctly points out it's entirely his fault for sending SpongeBob to spy. As punishment, Pearl uses his money to throw an expensive beach party where he's not allowed entry. This episode reveals the darker side of Mr. Krabs' protective nature. His love for Pearl is genuine, but his inability to trust her turns that love into something harmful. The episode shows that true protection means trusting the people you love, not surveilling them. Mr. Krabs shows that love for Pearl can make him controlling, but it can also make him kinder than money ever does. Krusty Love shows a side of Mr. Krabs that most people never see, his ability to genuinely love someone more than money. This episode proves that underneath all his greed, Mr. Krabs has a real heart that can make him act completely out of character when he falls in love. The whole thing starts when Mrs. Puff comes to the Krusty Krab for lunch, and Mr. Krabs immediately becomes smitten. He calls her a scrumptious, curvy cutie and gets so nervous he can barely speak, which is completely unlike his usual confident self. Their first meeting is awkward because Mr. Krabs is too nervous to form words around Mrs. Puff. He makes strange noises and gestures that SpongeBob has to translate, accidentally saying Mr. Krabs wants to hit her with a rake, before finally getting it right that he wants to ask her on a date. Their first date reveals just how much Mr. Krabs is willing to spend when he's in love. He takes Mrs. Puff to a fancy restaurant and spares no expense. Foot rubs between courses, caricatures, imported music, and a limousine ride. He calls her sweet names like My Little Shrimp Boat and My Prickly Peach. The shocking part comes when Mr. Krabs gets the bill, $100,000 for one night. This is the same Krab who normally cries over losing a single penny, but he spent his entire fortune without hesitation, because he couldn't help but spend every cent I had on her. For their second date, Mr. Krabs puts SpongeBob in charge of his wallet to control his spending, but he can't help himself every time he sees Mrs. Puff. His eyes turn into hearts, and he starts demanding SpongeBob buy her flowers, chocolates, and jewelry. The episode becomes a comedy of Mr. Krabs constantly switching between being romantic and being angry about spending money. One moment he's saying, Mrs. Puff needs a new fur coat, and the next he's yelling, you're spending all me money! Eventually, Mrs. Puff realizes Mr. Krabs is spending too much and offers to go Dutch by paying for half their expenses. The episode ends sweetly when she tells him, you're a very sweet man, and kisses him, making his eyes literally form the shape of a heart. Krusty Love proves that Mr. Krabs is capable of putting something above profit when it really matters, showing that even the greediest person can have genuine feelings. Now that we've looked at Mr. Krabs, let's talk about Sandy Cheeks. This squirrel from Texas brought a whole different energy to Bikini Bottom when she moved underwater. Now let's revisit the episode Texas again because it perfectly captures Sandy's struggle between her roots and her new life, and shows how true friendship means accepting someone's whole identity. Texas shows Sandy at her most vulnerable, revealing how hard it can be to build a new life while missing everything you left behind. This episode proves that true friendship means accepting all of someone, including the parts of their identity that you might not understand. The whole crisis starts when Sandy is making sandcastles with SpongeBob and Patrick. She builds Texas out of sand, but when SpongeBob asks, "What's a Texas?" a wave washes it away. Sandy sadly says, "It's nothing but a memory now," showing how homesick she's feeling. SpongeBob tries to cheer Sandy up with all their usual activities, karate, surfing, and jellyfishing, but she's not interested in any of it. When they catch a jellyfish, and SpongeBob tells it to go back to where you belong, Sandy starts crying. She tries to hide it by saying her helmet sprung a leak, but she finally admits she's feeling homesick. SpongeBob and Patrick think they can fix Sandy's homesickness by bringing her to her tree dome and yelling, "Welcome home, Sandy!" But this makes things worse because Sandy realizes her tree dome isn't really home. She runs inside, crying, and shuts herself away. Then Sandy does something that breaks everyone's hearts. She sings. She sits on top of her tree dome with a guitar and sings about missing Texas, with lyrics like, "The ocean's no place for a squirrel," and "I want to wake up in Texas. I miss those wide open skies." Her song is so sad that it makes everyone in Bikini Bottom start crying. After the song, Sandy decides to pack her bags and move back to Texas. When Sandy gets on the bus to leave, Patrick says, "What's so great about dumb old Texas?" This makes Sandy furious, and she gets off the bus to defend her home state. SpongeBob and Patrick start making fun of Texas in the most offensive ways possible to keep her from leaving. They do mocking impressions and call Texas stupid. Sandy gets so angry that she chases them with a lasso, smashing through rocks and karate chopping trees. The chase ends when SpongeBob reaches the Krusty Krab, which reveals a Texas-themed party inside. SpongeBob explains it's your own little slice of Texas, hoping this will make her want to stay. But Sandy explains that home isn't about barbecues or pecan pies. Home is where you're surrounded by critters that care about ya. Looking around at all her friends, she realizes I was home all along. This episode teaches that real friendship means respecting the things that matter to your friends, even if you don't understand them. Sandy learns that real friends accept her for who she is, but SpongeBob and Patrick show they still don't respect her boundaries. Survival of the Idiots perfectly shows why some boundaries exist for good reasons, and how cultural differences can lead to serious misunderstandings. This episode proves that ignoring someone's clear warnings about their personal needs can have painful consequences for everyone involved. The whole mess starts when SpongeBob and Patrick arrive at Sandy's tree dome to find it covered with metal walls and a keep out sign. Instead of respecting this obvious boundary, they go inside anyway and find a TV message from Sandy explaining that she's hibernating for the winter. She specifically warns them not to disturb her, saying animals don't like to be woken up during hibernation. But Patrick completely ignores Sandy's warning, saying, "When are you going to learn, SpongeBob?" No means yes. This attitude shows how some people think rules don't apply to them, especially when they don't understand the cultural or biological reasons behind those rules. SpongeBob and Patrick are fascinated by the snow because they've never experienced winter before. When they find Sandy in her tree, she looks completely different, bigger, furrier, and more bear-like because of hibernation. Instead of leaving her alone, they start playing around her sleeping body, pretending to be the outlaws from her dreams. When Sandy finally wakes up, she's in full hibernation mode, basically a wild animal protecting herself. She attacks SpongeBob and Patrick because they've invaded her space and disturbed her natural sleep cycle. The situation gets worse when they start fighting over who gets to be Dirty Dan, making so much noise that they wake Sandy up again. They end up trapped for the entire winter because the door freezes shut. In their desperation to stay warm, SpongeBob and Patrick make an even worse decision. They steal Sandy's fur while she's sleeping. They rip patches of fur off her body with duct tape, leaving her bald and exposed. When spring arrives and Sandy discovers what they've done, she's horrified to find herself completely hairless. The episode ends with SpongeBob and Patrick being used as Sandy's fur replacements wrapped around her body to keep her warm until her real fur grows back. This episode teaches that boundaries exist for important reasons, especially when dealing with cultural or biological differences. Sandy's hibernation was a biological necessity that SpongeBob and Patrick completely disrespected. SpongeBob and Patrick mess with Sandy while she sleeps, showing problems when you don't respect others. Sandy also feels pressure from her bosses to prove herself. Chimps Ahoy gives us a rare look at Sandy's professional life and shows just how much pressure she faces as a scientist trying to prove herself. This episode reveals that Sandy is actually a funded researcher whose entire future depends on impressing her bosses with groundbreaking inventions. The episode starts with Sandy in complete panic mode because her bosses from Treedome Enterprises Limited are coming for an inspection. She's been working day and night for a week, but all her inventions seem useless. She has a helmet that lets you talk to nuts, a Nutachino machine that tortures peanuts, and a nutcracker that can't even crack nuts. Sandy is convinced she's going to lose her funding and have to leave Bikini Bottom. This is the first time we really see Sandy vulnerable about her work. She calls herself a failure and is ready to give up everything she's built underwater. It shows that behind all her confidence and Texas pride, Sandy has serious self-doubt about her abilities as a scientist. When SpongeBob and Patrick try to help by building their own invention, they create the automatic back scratcher, hair comber, nose picker, and ukulele tuner 9000. It's a ridiculous contraption that almost kills one of Sandy's bosses when they test it, making Sandy's situation even worse. But then something unexpected happens. Sandy's broken nutcracker suddenly starts working perfectly when Dr. Marmalade takes out a banana. The machine automatically peels it, and the chimps go crazy with excitement. It turns out they've been searching for a banana peeler for 117 years, and Sandy accidentally invented exactly what they needed. Sandy ends up getting a 20-year contract with a substantial pay raise, proving that she's an exceptional scientist. This episode adds serious depth to Sandy's character by showing that she has a whole professional identity separate from her Texas roots. She's a legitimate scientist with career goals, funding pressures, and professional relationships who moved to Bikini Bottom for important scientific work. Now that we've looked at Sandy's story, let's talk about Plankton. This tiny villain has been trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula since day one, but his character has grown way beyond just being Mr. Krabs' enemy. FUN reveals something shocking about Plankton. When he stops obsessing over evil schemes, he's actually capable of genuine joy and friendship. This episode shows that underneath all his villainy, Plankton is just a lonely creature who doesn't know how to connect with others in healthy ways. The episode starts with Plankton successfully stealing a Krabby Patty, but SpongeBob chases him down and recovers it. When the townspeople call Plankton a loser, he breaks down crying and says, "You don't know what it's like to be a loser." SpongeBob feels bad and decides to befriend him, thinking, "I'll bet if he had just one friend, he wouldn't be such a meanie." Karen sees this as the perfect opportunity for revenge, telling Plankton to befriend SpongeBob and steal the Krabby Patty later. So Plankton agrees to hang out, but only as part of a scheme. The magic happens when SpongeBob teaches Plankton about fun through the famous FUN song. SpongeBob sings about friends and togetherness, but Plankton responds with, "F is for fire that burns down the whole town, U is for uranium bombs, N is for no survivors." SpongeBob doesn't give up and keeps teaching Plankton the real meaning of fun. When Plankton finally tries it, SpongeBob's way, something incredible happens. He experiences genuine happiness for the first time. After doing a cartwheel and singing properly, Plankton says, "I don't understand this. I feel all tingly inside. Should we stop?" When SpongeBob tells him, "That's how you're supposed to feel," Plankton responds, "Well, I like it, let's do it again." They spend the day doing innocent activities like frolicking through flowers and playing ukulele. Plankton genuinely laughs and has fun without any evil schemes involved. He's so happy that he even starts dressing like SpongeBob. The heartbreaking moment comes at the movie theater when Mr. Krabs forces SpongeBob to search Plankton's pocket, revealing he had stolen a Krabby Patty after all. SpongeBob is devastated, crying, "But we sang the FUN song." For a brief moment, it seems like Plankton has learned something when he says, "I tricked you to get the Krabby Patty, but then you showed me friendship, and now I realize that's all I ever really wanted." But then he reveals it's another lie and runs away with the patty. The tragic part is that Plankton was genuinely happy during their friendship. He experienced real joy and connection for the first time, but when forced to choose between friendship and evil, he chose what he knew best. Plankton briefly finds real happiness through friendship, but his obsession with ambition shows again when even his own family sees him as an outsider. Plankton's army gives us our first real look at Plankton's family background and reveals something tragic. Even among his own relatives, Plankton is an outsider because of his ambitions and pretentious attitude. This episode shows that Plankton's isolation has also rejected the simple, humble life his family represents. The episode starts with Plankton failing yet another scheme to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Karen suggests he needs help, but when Plankton tries to recruit criminals at a seedy club, he talks like a pretentious intellectual saying, "Felicitations, malefactors. I am endeavoring to misappropriate the formulary." Of course, he gets beaten up. This failure makes Plankton realize he should call his entire extended family for help, expecting the staggering intellect of a million super smart criminal masterminds. But when his family arrives, they're simple country folk with thick accents who play banjo and act like stereotypical hillbillies. They call him Cousin Plankton and introduce dozens of relatives with names like Billy Bob, Billy Jim, Billy Billy Bo Willie. The culture clash becomes obvious immediately. Plankton's family represents everything he's tried to distance himself from. They're humble, unsophisticated, and content with simple pleasures. The embarrassment gets worse when they reveal Plankton's real first name is Sheldon. which makes Karen burst out laughing. When Plankton asks what his family wants in return for helping him, their requests are hilariously simple. A new banjo string, a matching boot, more laptop memory, and root beer. These modest desires contrast sharply with Plankton's grandiose ambitions. The family actually succeeds in helping Plankton break into the Krusty Krab, but when he finally reads the secret formula and discovers it supposedly contains 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton, he screams and runs away in horror, followed by his terrified family. This episode shows that Plankton's evil ambitions have made him an outsider everywhere. He's too pretentious for his humble family and too small to succeed in the criminal world. His education and vocabulary separate him from his roots, but his failures prevent him from achieving his goals, which explains why he's so bitter and alone. Plankton's pride makes him an outsider even in his own family, and his arrogance pushes him to lean too hard on Karen until their relationship nearly collapses. Computer overload shows Plankton at his most vulnerable, revealing his deep frustration with his own limitations and giving us rare moments where he actually shows self-awareness about his failures. This episode proves that underneath all his evil schemes, Plankton is just a small creature who knows he's in over his head but refuses to admit it. The episode starts with Plankton dealing with his usual problems. His food is literally toxic, and customers keep asking for Krabby Krab items. After a customer leaves, Plankton has a breakdown where he talks to his imaginary food, saying, "Hello, I'm a decent meal. Wonderful to meet you. Please pay money for me so your old pal Plankton doesn't lose everything he spent his entire life working for." This moment shows how desperate and lonely he really is. The conflict with Karen reveals Plankton's deep insecurity about his size. When Karen makes fun of his cooking, Plankton says, "Sometimes I wonder if you're here to make me feel like I'm 2 inches tall." The camera then shows a ruler proving he actually is 2 inches tall. In a moment of vulnerability, Plankton admits he needs Karen when his eye starts burning, and he doesn't know why. Karen simply tells him to blink, showing how much he depends on her for basic functions. But instead of being grateful, Plankton gets defensive and claims he doesn't need her. Plankton's attempts to build replacement computers are pathetic failures. His robots are just a toaster, a machine that can't fit through doorways, and an old hairdryer taped to the back of a miniature windmill. When the robots start attacking each other, Plankton blames Karen for all his failures, saying, "It's you that's been holding me back." Karen finally has enough and leaves, writing a note that says, "I just can't go into sleep mode at night knowing that you'll continue blaming me for all of your failures." Plankton's final scheme fails when his giant robot runs out of power just feet from the Krusty Krab because he forgot about the extension cord. Sitting in the wreckage, Plankton finally shows real self-awareness, crying, "Once again, you've left me covered in the sticky goo of my own folly. Only this time, I'm all alone." When Karen returns, Plankton immediately apologizes and admits, "I could never replace you." This rare moment of honesty shows that despite his pride, Plankton knows he's helpless without Karen, and that his biggest enemy is his own ego. Now that we've seen how all these characters evolved, let's talk about Bikini Bottom itself. This underwater town has its own government, schools, and community events that make it feel like a real place where people actually live and work together. Let's get started with its government and institutions, beginning with law enforcement. Hall Monitor perfectly shows how Bikini Bottom's approach to authority is surprisingly loose, and how even the best intentions can create total chaos when bureaucratic systems don't have proper oversight. Hall Monitor reveals just how disorganized Bikini Bottom's law enforcement really is, and proves that giving someone authority without proper training or limits can turn good intentions into public disasters. This episode shows that Bikini Bottom's institutions are surprisingly casual about who gets power and what they do with it. The whole mess starts at Mrs. Puff's boating school when she reluctantly makes SpongeBob the hall monitor. She clearly doesn't want to give him this responsibility, trying to pick literally anyone else first before finally giving up and choosing SpongeBob. This shows that even educational institutions in Bikini Bottom operate more on convenience than competence. SpongeBob takes the job way too seriously, giving an extremely long speech that goes on for hours until everyone falls asleep and school ends. But here's where Bikini Bottom's loose oversight becomes a problem. Mrs. Puff lets SpongeBob keep the uniform overnight, asking herself, "What are the consequences of what I've just done?" The moment SpongeBob hits the streets, he starts causing havoc while thinking he's helping. He sees a broken traffic light and decides his monitor duties shouldn't end just because the bell rang. So he starts directing traffic with wild hand gestures, causing a huge car wreck. This shows how Bikini Bottom has no system to prevent unauthorized people from taking control of public safety. SpongeBob then breaks into someone's house through their window, puts on a ski mask, and screams, "I'm the open window maniac," to teach them a lesson about home security. The couple runs away terrified, but there's no immediate response from actual law enforcement. When real police officers finally show up, they're looking for the maniac, SpongeBob, but they don't recognize him even though he's standing right there in an obvious hall monitor uniform. They show Patrick a wanted poster with SpongeBob's face on it, but instead of investigating properly, they just mess with Patrick by showing him the poster repeatedly to make him scream. The chase scene reveals how incompetent the system really is. Patrick directs SpongeBob to hide from himself without realizing SpongeBob is the maniac. SpongeBob runs around in circles, crashes through multiple buildings before finally realizing, "I'm the maniac." The police only catch him because he confesses. When Mrs. Puff shows up, she takes responsibility saying, "I'm the one who gave him the uniform in the first place." But instead of reforming the system, the authorities just arrest her too. The episode ends with Mrs. Puff teaching from jail, showing that Bikini Bottom's solution to institutional failure is to punish individuals rather than fix broken systems. This episode reveals that Bikini Bottom's institutions operate on trust and good intentions rather than proper oversight and training, creating chaos when bureaucratic systems prioritize convenience over competence. Bikini Bottom gives power too easily, and that carelessness often leads to blaming the wrong people. Mrs. Puff, You're Fired, exposes the brutal reality that educators face when dealing with students who simply can't be taught through conventional methods, and shows how broken educational systems blame teachers instead of addressing the real problems. This episode proves that some students need completely different approaches, but bureaucratic institutions would rather fire teachers than admit their one-size-fits-all methods don't work. The episode starts with Mr. Fitz from the Boating Teachers Accreditation Bureau arriving to review Mrs. Puff's teaching certificate. He reveals that SpongeBob has failed 1,258,056 times and shows her a massive folder of failed tests. When Mrs. Puff explains that SpongeBob is unteachable, Mr. Fitz refuses to listen, saying, "We cannot blame the students for the incompetence of the teacher." This attitude perfectly captures how educational bureaucrats ignore that some students have learning differences that traditional methods can't address. The pressure becomes unbearable when Mr. Fitz tells Mrs. Puff that if SpongeBob fails his driving test that day, she'll be replaced. When SpongeBob inevitably crashes within seconds, Mr. Fitz immediately fires Mrs. Puff. Her reaction is telling she becomes ecstatic, laughing, "Free at last." This shows how much stress and trauma she's endured trying to teach SpongeBob in an impossible situation. The new instructor, Sergeant Sam Roderick, represents the tough love approach that administrators think will solve difficult teaching situations. He's a military-style drill sergeant who uses extreme, borderline abusive methods, throwing students through doors and making them crawl obstacle courses. What's fascinating is that Roderick's unconventional methods actually work with SpongeBob to some extent. SpongeBob learns to memorize the course by crawling it hundreds of times and can parallel park when he's learned through repetition. This shows that SpongeBob just needs methods that work with his unique learning style. But the system's fundamental problem becomes clear during the final test. SpongeBob has learned to drive with a blindfold, but when told he can't drive blindfolded during the real test, he panics and crashes. The rigidity of standardized testing doesn't allow for the adaptive methods that actually help SpongeBob learn. The destruction that follows is catastrophic. SpongeBob destroys the boating school and half the city. Even Roderick can't control the situation, getting run over while trying to stop the boat. This shows that neither traditional nor extreme teaching methods can handle challenging students without proper support and flexibility. In the end, the system admits defeat and rehires Mrs. Puff, with Mr. Fitz saying, "Even our finest instructor could not teach you." But instead of developing better methods, they just go back to the old system. The episode's final moment shows Mrs. Puff sobbing as SpongeBob's welcome back gift falls apart, revealing that nothing has really changed. She's still trapped teaching an unteachable student with no institutional support. Bikini Bottom's schools blame teachers, and its courts blame whoever the crowd chooses. The Smoking Peanut exposes how Bikini Bottom's justice system is driven more by public emotion and mob mentality than actual evidence or due process. This episode shows how communities can rush to judgment based on assumptions, and how media hysteria can turn minor incidents into major crimes that demand someone to blame. The episode starts when SpongeBob throws a peanut at Clamu, the giant oyster, to wake her up so she'll perform. The oyster starts crying loudly, and SpongeBob realizes he might have caused it. But what happens next reveals reveals how quickly a community can spiral into panic and demand justice without understanding what really happened. The media immediately jumps on the story, with news anchor Johnny declaring it a deliberate attack by a cruel, careless, evil person. The news shows the oyster's cry being heard around the world, turning a local incident into an international crisis and creating massive pressure to find someone to blame. The community's reaction is immediate and extreme. Everyone becomes obsessed with finding the criminal. Patrick appoints himself detective, examining grains of sand as suspicious evidence. Sandy threatens to rip apart whoever caused the oyster pain, literally tearing a phone book in half. The entire town is consumed with finding someone to punish. When police investigate, they don't actually investigate much. They ask SpongeBob basic questions about being at the zoo and knowing about peanuts, but don't examine evidence or try to understand what happened. The moment SpongeBob admits to being there with Patrick, they immediately arrest Patrick based on this flimsy connection. The mob justice becomes obvious during Patrick's public humiliation. The crowd throws peanuts at him and boos, treating it like entertainment rather than justice. When SpongeBob tries to confess, giving a speech about truth and honesty, the crowd gets impatient and just wants to throw peanuts at both of them. The real twist comes when the zoo worker reveals that Mr. Krab stole Clamu's pearl, which was actually an egg containing her baby. The oyster wasn't crying because of SpongeBob's peanut, she was crying because someone stole her baby. The crowd immediately turns on Mr. Krabs without any reflection on how wrong they were about SpongeBob and Patrick. The episode ends with the crowd throwing peanuts at Mr. Krabs. The community gets their scapegoat and feels satisfied, but they never acknowledge how their rush to judgment almost punished two innocent people. This shows that Bikini Bottom's idea of justice is find someone to blame and punish them publicly, where public opinion completely overrides facts and due process. Now that we've seen how Bikini Bottom's government works, let's talk about the fun stuff, the cultural events and traditions that bring this underwater community together and show what really matters to the people who live there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and let's revisit the episode Culture Shock, because it perfectly shows how Bikini Bottom comes together to celebrate performance art and community entertainment, even when things don't go exactly as planned. Culture Shock establishes that Bikini Bottom has a deep appreciation for live entertainment and community gatherings, proving that this underwater town values culture and performance even when the results are completely unexpected. This episode shows how the community will support local talent shows and pay good money to be entertained, even if it means throwing tomatoes at bad performers. The whole thing starts because the Krusty Krab is having serious money problems. When Squidward suggests a talent show, Mr. Krabs immediately sees the potential because he knows Bikini Bottom residents love live entertainment and are willing to pay for it. Squidward sells the idea by telling Mr. Krabs he'll be bringing culture to this cultural wasteland we call Bikini Bottom. This shows that while Bikini Bottom might not have fancy theaters, the residents are hungry for cultural experiences and performance art. The build-up reveals how seriously the community takes these events. News crews show up, the Krusty Krab gets completely redecorated, and families come out to support performers. SpongeBob's parents travel to see him perform, showing that talent shows are major community events. The actual show becomes a perfect example of Bikini Bottom's cultural values. Pearl's cheerleading literally destroys the floor, but Mr. Krabs calls it talent. Gary performs poetry that's just meow, meow, meow. But Sandy appreciates his way with words, showing how the community supports even abstract artistic expressions. The real cultural moment comes when Squidward performs his elaborate interpretive dance with classical music and choreography. The audience initially watches respectfully, but when the performance gets too pretentious, they start throwing tomatoes. This reveals that Bikini Bottom wants entertainment that connects with them, not self-indulgent art. The episode's ending proves Bikini Bottom's taste is more sophisticated than expected. When SpongeBob starts mopping up tomatoes, the audience becomes genuinely captivated. They recognize that his simple, honest work is more entertaining than Squidward's pretentious dancing because it's authentic. Mr. Krabs makes more money from people buying tomatoes to throw than from the actual talent show. The episode establishes that culture in Bikini Bottom isn't about being sophisticated. It's about bringing the community together and creating shared experiences everyone can enjoy. Bikini Bottom loves culture and fun, but that same passion for competition can turn ugly fast. The Fry Cook Games reveals just how competitive Bikini Bottom really is when it comes to professional sports, and shows how business rivalries between adults can poison friendships between kids who don't even understand what they're fighting about. This episode proves that competition can bring out both the best athletic performances and the worst human behavior. The Fry Cook Games are clearly a major cultural event in Bikini Bottom, with the 21st annual competition being held at a massive fast food coliseum complete with news coverage, opening ceremonies, and crowds of spectators. The games feature events like deep fry pole vaulting, chocolate high diving, and bun wrestling, showing that Bikini Bottom has turned fast food preparation into Olympic-level athletic competition. The real story is the bitter rivalry between Mr. Krabs and Plankton that's been going on for decades. The news coverage shows flashbacks of years of sabotage, Mr. Krabs winning gold while Plankton sprayed him with a hose, and Plankton winning with his onion ring routine while Mr. Krabs blew him off the podium. The competition escalates when SpongeBob represents the Krusty Krab and Patrick suddenly decides to work for the chum bucket. Patrick doesn't understand what being a fry cook means, calling it just flippin' patties. But the moment he puts on a chum bucket name tag, the adults start manipulating both friends against each other. Mr. Krabs and Plankton immediately begin psychological warfare, telling SpongeBob that Patrick ain't your friend and is plotting your downfall, while telling Patrick that SpongeBob thinks he's better than you. They're brainwashing two kids who were playing together minutes earlier into believing they're mortal enemies. The manipulation works because SpongeBob and Patrick don't understand they're being used. They start calling each other yellow and pink as insults, completely forgetting their friendship. During competition, SpongeBob calls Patrick Pinky, and Patrick responds with Yellow Boy. The final bun wrestling match reveals how far the rivalry has gone. Both transform into massive, muscular versions of themselves and engage in brutal combat. Patrick tortures SpongeBob while SpongeBob tries to erase Patrick's name. They're literally trying to destroy each other's identity. The turning point comes when their pants rip and they discover they're wearing each other's signature colors as underwear. This reveals that despite all the anger, they still care about each other. The fact that they chose underwear in their friend's color shows their bond was never really broken. When SpongeBob and Patrick hug and walk away together, the crowd boos and Mr. Krabs and Plankton shout, "Get back here and kill each other." This shows the competition was never about the athletes, it was about adults using kids to settle their own petty grudges, exposing how competitive culture can become toxic when winning matters more than relationships. The games show adults ruining kids' fun, and the prom shows SpongeBob being left out. The chaperone perfectly exposes the brutal social hierarchy that exists among Bikini Bottom's teenagers and shows how desperately SpongeBob tries to fit into a world where he'll never truly belong. This episode reveals that even in an underwater cartoon town, high school social dynamics are just as cruel and exclusive as they are in the real world. The social hierarchy becomes obvious when Pearl's original prom date stands her up. She calls him long, tan, and handsome, and acts like he's the only fish worth dating. When Mr. Krabs suggests himself or Squidward as replacements, Pearl cries harder, showing that even her own father doesn't meet her social standards. The real social exclusion starts when Mr. Krabs suggests SpongeBob. Pearl's reaction is devastating. She calls him the fry cook, like it's a disease, and says taking him would ruin her complexion. She's terrified of being kicked off the most frequently pictured in the yearbook committee, showing how much social status matters to these teenagers. When Mr. Krabs asks customers if anyone wants to take Pearl to prom, they literally all run away. This proves that the entire community sees SpongeBob as socially unacceptable for a teenage whale. SpongeBob knows he doesn't fit in, which is why he desperately tries to transform himself into long, tan, and handsome. He puts on stilts, gets a tan, and changes his appearance because he understands his natural self isn't good enough for Pearl's social circle. At the prom, Pearl's friends all have traditional dates and are eager to judge Pearl's choice. When Pearl sees SpongeBob struggling with the punch bowl, she immediately tries to hide him and suggests they go see how ugly Cindy's dress is. The dance floor becomes a battlefield when Pearl explains that everybody here is doing the whack. SpongeBob tries to fit in, but destroys the entire food table when he attempts their conformist dance. The breaking point comes when SpongeBob runs crying into the ladies' bathroom. Other students call him poor little guy, showing pity rather than acceptance. But then Pearl realizes that SpongeBob's authenticity is more fun than trying to fit in. SpongeBob teaches everyone the sponge dance, which is infinitely more entertaining than their conformist moves. The students' final reaction reveals the true social hierarchy. Even though they were having fun, they immediately turn on SpongeBob and Pearl when things get chaotic, literally throwing them out while yelling, "Get out!" This shows that acceptance was only temporary. SpongeBob will always be an outsider. Now let's go back to some episodes that show how Bikini Bottom celebrates different holidays and special occasions throughout the year, proving that this underwater community has a rich calendar of traditions that bring everyone together. SpongeBob shows he'll always feel like an outsider, but the holidays bring everyone together and make them feel like they belong. Sleepy Time, Life of Crime, and Valentine's Day establish Bikini Bottom's calendar of celebrations and show how holidays and special events bring the community together, even when things don't go exactly as planned. Sleepy Time, Life of Crime, and Valentine's Day reveal that Bikini Bottom has its own unique traditions that mirror real-world celebrations while adding their own underwater twist. Sleepy Time might not seem like a holiday episode at first, but it actually establishes one of Bikini Bottom's most important daily traditions. Sleepy Time shows that everyone in the community follows the same sleep schedule, creating shared dream experiences that connect neighbors in unexpected ways. When SpongeBob visits everyone's dreams in Sleepy Time, he discovers that even in their subconscious minds, the residents maintain their individual personalities while still being part of a larger community fabric. Life of Crime introduces us to National Free Balloon Day, which proves that Bikini Bottom has official government-recognized holidays with specific traditions. The fact that there's an entire day dedicated to giving away free balloons shows how the community values simple pleasures and generous gestures. When SpongeBob and Patrick panic about stealing a balloon in Life of Crime, they don't realize they're actually participating in a sanctioned community celebration that encourages sharing and joy. Valentine's Day showcases Bikini Bottom's biggest romantic holiday, complete with a full carnival, decorations, and community-wide participation. The Valentine's Day Carnival in Valentine's Day is a major celebration with rides, games, vendors, and elaborate decorations that the entire community attends. SpongeBob's gesture of giving Valentine's cards to everyone in town shows that this holiday is about spreading love to the whole community, not just romantic partners. The way these holidays bring people together reveals something important about Bikini Bottom's social structure. During Valentine's Day, SpongeBob gives gifts to Squidward, Mrs. Puff, Plankton, and Sandy, showing that the holiday transcends normal social boundaries. Even grumpy Squidward receives a Valentine, and while he tears it up, he still participates in the tradition by acknowledging it exists. What makes these celebrations special is how they accommodate everyone's personality, while still creating shared experiences. In Sleepy Time, each character's dreams reflect their individual interests. Gary reads poetry, Squidward performs classical music, Sandy does extreme sports, and Mr. Krabs catches money like fish. But they're all dreaming at the same time, creating a synchronized community experience even in sleep. The Valentine's Day Carnival in Valentine's Day shows how Bikini Bottom creates inclusive celebrations that work for different social groups. There are rides for thrill seekers, games for competitors, cotton candy for kids, and romantic spaces for couples. Patrick's rampage when he thinks he's been left out proves how important these community celebrations are to residents' sense of belonging. Life of Crime reveals that even Bikini Bottom's law enforcement participates in holiday traditions. The police officers are totally casual about balloon theft on Free Balloon Day, showing that the community's institutions support these celebrations rather than just tolerating them. The fact that they offer SpongeBob and Patrick lollipops in Life of Crime shows that even authority figures participate in the spirit of giving that defines their holidays. Sleepy Time, Life of Crime, and Valentine's Day establish that Bikini Bottom's calendar revolves around events that promote community bonding, generous giving, and shared joy. Whether it's the daily tradition of synchronized dreaming in Sleepy Time, the annual Free Balloon Day in Life of Crime, or the romantic celebration in Valentine's Day, each event serves to strengthen the social fabric that holds this underwater community together. The holidays are collective experiences that remind everyone they're part of something bigger than themselves. Now that we've seen how Bikini Bottom celebrates together, let's talk about how the community actually works day to day. There are all kinds of relationships and social rules that keep this underwater town functioning, even when things get completely crazy. Now let's go back to Band Geeks because it perfectly shows how this underwater community can come together when properly motivated and how real leadership can emerge from the most unexpected places. Band Geeks reveals something incredible about Bikini Bottom's community spirit. When residents see someone genuinely passionate about achieving something, they'll move mountains to help make it happen, even if they have no idea what they're doing. This episode proves that real leadership doesn't come from authority or talent, it comes from inspiring people to care about something bigger than themselves. What makes this episode special is how it shows the community's willingness to step outside their comfort zones for a neighbor in need. Sandy leaves her scientific work, Mr. Krabs abandons his money counting, Mrs. Puff takes time away from driving instruction, and even Plankton temporarily stops plotting. These are people with completely different lives and interests, but they all show up because Squidward asked for help. The beautiful part is that nobody expects to be good at this. Patrick doesn't know mayonnaise isn't an instrument, Plankton has never touched a harmonica, and most have never been in a marching band. But they keep coming back because they can see how much this means to Squidward. That's the kind of community loyalty that makes Bikini Bottom special. When the band falls apart and starts fighting, it actually shows how invested everyone has become. Harold and Mr. Krabs aren't fighting about music, they're fighting because they care about doing well and they're frustrated. The passion is real, even if the talent isn't there yet. The turning point comes when SpongeBob realizes the community has let down someone who was counting on them. His speech about pretending Squidward is a fireman works because it reminds everyone that helping neighbors is what communities do. What's amazing is that the community practice all night without Squidward, transforming from a chaotic mess into a legendary rock band. They want to make Squidward proud. The most important leadership moment comes from SpongeBob, not Squidward. While Squidward was focused on his own embarrassment, SpongeBob was thinking about bringing people together. He turned a personal failure into a community mission, showing that the best leaders care more about others than themselves. Band Geeks proves that Bikini Bottom's residents will rally around anyone who has genuine passion and treats them with respect. The episode shows that extraordinary things happen when communities unite behind shared goals, and that the most unlikely leaders can emerge when people need them most. One story shows how teamwork makes anyone a winner, and another shows how even kids can run a business with enough excitement. Chocolate with Nuts shows how Bikini Bottom residents will totally support young entrepreneurs, even when they have no clue what they're doing. This episode proves that pure enthusiasm can beat business experience every single time. The whole thing starts when SpongeBob and Patrick see a fancy living magazine and decide they want to be rich. Squidward tells them rich people are entrepreneurs who sell stuff, so they immediately decide to become traveling chocolate salesmen. They have zero business experience, but jump right in anyway. What's crazy is how much the community helps them out. Their first customer goes absolutely nuts for chocolate and chases them around town screaming chocolate, which shows there's real demand for what they're selling. Then they meet this con artist who sells them totally unnecessary bags, but other customers actually try to give them real business advice. The best part is how forgiving everyone is when SpongeBob and Patrick mess up constantly. When they can't find their chocolate because it's buried under tons of bags, customers wait patiently. When Patrick tells people chocolate will make them live forever, an elderly woman actually buys it because she wants to support these kids trying to start a business. SpongeBob and Patrick start making up crazy lies about their chocolate, saying it'll make your hair grow, help you fly, and bring world peace. People keep buying anyway because they can see how passionate these guys are. The community actively want them to succeed. The big breakthrough comes when Tom, the chocolate crazy guy, finally catches them and buys their entire inventory for a huge pile of cash. He's grateful they kept him entertained all day. By the end, SpongeBob and Patrick are rich enough to rent out the fanciest restaurant in town, proving that Bikini Bottom rewards entrepreneurs who work hard and stay enthusiastic. The episode shows that this community loves supporting local businesses, even when those businesses are run by people who make every possible mistake along the way. Now to finish it off, let's talk about SpongeBob SquarePantis' legacy and how this underwater show has shaped an entire generation and continues to influence culture today. It's wild to think that a yellow sponge who lives in a pineapple under the sea has basically become the voice of an entire generation. But here we are, more than 25 years after SpongeBob first hit our screens, and the little guy's still everywhere from our everyday conversations to the deepest corners of the internet. If you're a millennial or Gen Z, you probably can't scroll through social media without seeing at least one SpongeBob meme. And honestly, that makes perfect sense. The show has made over $13 billion, yes, billion with a B, in sales, won a bunch of Emmy Awards, and created phrases that we still use today. When someone says, "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" everyone just gets it. Here's where things get really interesting. SpongeBob basically invented meme culture before we even knew what memes were. Think about it. The show premiered in 1999, right when Gen Z kids, born 1997 to 2012, were starting to watch TV. As they grew up and the internet exploded, guess what became their go-to source for reaction images and funny videos? Yep, our beloved Sponge. The numbers are pretty incredible. There's a SpongeBob meme subreddit with over 4.2 million members. That's more than most shows could ever dream of. Why does it work so well? Because SpongeBob episodes are perfect for capturing literally any emotion or situation you can think of. Happy, sad, confused, excited, dead inside from work. There's a SpongeBob scene for that. What's really fascinating is how our relationship with the show has evolved as we've gotten older. Remember when Squidward was just the grumpy neighbor? Now we're all adults working dead-end jobs, and suddenly we're like, Squidward was the real one all along. Many of us see ourselves in his daily struggles with annoying customers and unrealistic bosses. The show actually taught us a lot without us realizing it. Creator Steven Hillenburg was a marine biologist. So while we were laughing at Patrick's antics, we were also learning about ocean life. Pretty sneaky, but in the best way possible. But SpongeBob's real superpower is bringing people together. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 35, mention, the Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me. And watch everyone light up. Parents who grew up watching SpongeBob are now showing episodes to their own kids, creating this amazing cycle of shared memories and inside jokes. The show taught us that being optimistic and kind, like SpongeBob, is actually pretty cool. That greed isn't worth it, looking at you, Mr. Krabs, and that it's okay to be a little weird. These might seem like simple lessons, but they've stuck with us through some pretty crazy times in the world. At the end of the day, SpongeBob SquarePants did something really special. It gave an entire generation a common language, shaped how we joke around with each other, and created a comfort show that we can always go back to when life gets tough. As one college student put it perfectly, SpongeBob is our generation's Mickey Mouse. And honestly, that feels exactly right. The little yellow guy who just wants to flip patties and have fun with his friends somehow became the icon that defined how we see the world, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. If you enjoyed our video, subscribe to our channel for more videos like these.